This is Jocko Podcast number 225 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Last month, I went to a memorial service. And it was the first memorial service that I had been to for a long time that wasn't for a SEAL. It was the first memorial service I had been to for a long time that was for someone who died of natural causes. A memorial service for someone that had actually lived their full life expectancy, 80 years, or maybe 82 years or 83. I don't remember the exact number. Which is kind of interesting in its own right, because when someone that's younger dies, then everyone talks about their age. You know, everyone says he was only 26, or he was just 28, he was only 32. And I've been to far too many funerals and memorial services like that. Far too many funerals where the mourning that is taking place is about what is never going to get done. Potential that wasn't reached. A life that was cut short. But this memorial was for the patriarch of a group of families who are friends with my family. And this old man, had 3 sons who are friends of mine. And those sons all have kids, and all our kids grew up together, and we have done a lot over the years, surfing and camping and climbing and playing music around the campfire or in the little studio. And I've actually known these guys for over 20 years. And because I knew them, I knew their old man too. And the old man was, he was a stud in his own right. He was going strong. He was an athlete. He was an entrepreneur. He liked sports and beer and rock and roll and late nights. And again, this guy was an older guy, 75, 78, 80 years old in his later years. And he poured everything he could into his family. Into his kids and into their kids. And he was a good man. And he lived a good life, and the memorial service was, a small kind of private affair. There was probably, 70 or 80 people there. All the extended family, all the kids and friends of the family and some of his friends. And it was a nice service. And I said a few words. And I kind of, told a funny story. His sons had spoke, and his wife had spoke, and it is emotional. And I took the opportunity to lighten the mood a little. And what I talked about how he would listen when his sons and me would play music back in the day. And we would play for hours, and he would listen for hours. And listen, when I talk about us playing music, I'm talking about us just jamming and riffing, and we're talking about songs that are 15 or 20 or 30 minutes long, just songs that are just meandering through riffs and bridges and verses and going from just droning heavy thunder to like quiet acoustic jams, and all these different songs to be played just one time and one time only. Just improv. And they're hard to follow and they're hard to understand, and you know, he would stay down there and he would just listen and he would rock out with us, this old man. And he, like, you could see it in his face, he loved it. He loved listening to us. And, you know, look, his sons are all awesome musicians. And I'm the kind of not so awesome musician. But even the best musicians, you know, when you're just kind of making stuff up as you go along, it's not going to be, it's not something that's super easy to listen to. And he would listen to us with no expectations, no criticism. He would enjoy it for what it was. Which was imperfect, which was off time, which was maybe a little out of tune. And he would listen to it with a big smile on his face. And later it got me thinking about how often do we look at things that are going on around us, and how often do we think, if only that was a little bit different, if only that was a little bit more in tune, if only that timing was a little bit tighter, if only this had happened a little bit sooner, or that had happened a little bit later. We're constantly picking apart what we see. And that's a little lesson I learned from the old man. Because in the end, even after 80 years or 90 years or 100 years, one thing we're going to still want is a little more time. Even forever is too short. So don't waste too much time wishing and hoping and wanting for things to be different. Instead, sometimes you just got to sit back and you got to smile. And you got to enjoy the jam. And listen to the music for what it is. Imperfect. Out of tune. Off time. But real. And with that, it has been a while since we've done a Q&A, Echo Charles.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's rock and roll. Let's jam.
Yes, sir.
What do we got? Q&A.
Various questions from the interwebs. All right, first question. Jocko, I failed to understand a task that was given to me. I take ownership that I didn't ask the right questions. But extreme ownership applies to my boss too, as she didn't make sure that I understood it correctly. Or is that a poor excuse?
Optimally, in the world of extreme ownership, everybody takes ownership. And there are, and I talked about this when Dave Burke was on.
Good deal, Dave.
Yes. is that it's interlocking fields of fire. So the various people that are trying to find solutions, they overlap. And problems get solved from two different directions. So the problems get flanked when this is happening. But we can't guarantee always that everybody takes ownership. And we can't guarantee that, but that doesn't mean that we point our fingers at someone and say, you need to take ownership. Because as we know, when you do that, people get defensive. And then they start blaming you. So we avoid that. What we do is we take ownership. So what happens here in this situation? Here's the possible outcomes, right? If you go to your boss and you say to her, you didn't make sure I understood, right? You go cast that blame. Yeah. There's a decent chance that she says, well, you actually need to pay attention. That's not on me. And if you don't understand, you need to ask questions. So nothing. She hasn't changed anything. Mm-hmm. She hasn't changed anything. And you, by the way, you've created a little bit of an antagonistic relationship here because you're pointing the finger. So that doesn't really help. Now, here's another possible outcome. You go and you say, hey, look, I failed to make sure that I understood this task. Do you mind next time if I give you a quick read back of what I think the task is to make sure that I understand it? Right. So I'm taking full ownership. Like, this is on me. I need to do this. And now what you're more likely to get in this situation is, the boss to say, oh, you know what? Of course, absolutely. Hey, you know what? Next time, let me make sure I give you a more detailed explanation so that you have a better understanding. That's on me. And all of a sudden, we've got this problem getting solved from two directions. Now, there's also a chance that when you say, hey, when you say something, hey, let me do a read back with you. You might say all that. And she goes, yeah, cool. You should do that. Whatever. Pay more attention. In which case, right? So she's not taking any ownership. She's like, yeah, you should have. Mm-hmm. Which is the big fear people always have in their head that when I say something's my fault, people go, yeah, it is. Yeah. And now they go, wait a second. Yeah. Extreme ownership's not supposed to work like that. Yes, it is. Because when you take ownership of the problem, and I go, you know what? I should have asked you questions. She goes, yeah, you should have. And you go, yep, exactly. That's what I just said. And now you ask questions, and now you make sure you fully understand the task, and now the problem's solved. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think when you asked that question, you had the suspicion. What did he say? Is that a poor excuse? So you had the suspicion that you were maybe, perhaps, unfortunately, making a little bit of an excuse, but you're correct. It is a poor excuse. Take ownership. Hey, in an ideal world, the person above you in the chain of command takes ownership as well, but you can't force them to take ownership. Yeah. So solve the problem. Take ownership and get it solved.
Kind of when you think of it, and this is actually maybe a follow-up question, maybe. When you think about it, when you have the expectation, reasonable or not, the expectation that other people have to take ownership too, isn't that essentially negating your whole extreme ownership?
Yes. Whether it negates it or not, I don't know. Your hope is, the hope is when I start taking ownership, other people start taking ownership as well. But I can't necessarily control that. I can't force them to take ownership. Yeah. I can say, hey, that's your part of the project. You should have done it. They go, okay, well, whatever. I don't think so. Right? So me forcing ownership on you doesn't really work. What I should do is take ownership. What I hope is when I take ownership of your part of the project, you go, hey, Jocko, you know what? That's actually my department. Let me take that. That's something I should be running. I go, oh, okay, cool, great. So you just took ownership. Yeah. But if you don't take ownership, roger that. I got it, and I'm running with it.
Yeah, and the genuineness, where this was a question like that, kind of guys would get asked a lot. Like, when it would a lot of times be about the other person taking ownership in the scenario, always. Right? Which is crazy. But yeah, you kind of have that hope. You do have that hope.
Yes, you do.
For sure. But the actual expectation that, where like an expectation is there that can be let down kind of thing.
I can't be mad at you
right
when you don't take ownership. Look, well, I guess I can be mad at you, but it doesn't help. Right?
Yeah.
If you were supposed to write a script for a freaking advertisement that we were going to do for whatever.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of something cool.
Sure.
If we were going to do an advertisement and you were supposed to write a script and then we show up and you didn't do it. And I'm like, you know what? Hey, we'll come back tomorrow. I'll go home and write a script.
Yeah.
And you're like, what I would like you to say is, no, hey, you know what, Jocko, I'm supposed to write the script for this, whatever, I'll do it. And I go, oh, okay, cool. But if you don't do that, you go, okay, cool, go write the script. I have to say, okay, cool, got it.
Finally do some work.
Now, what do I learn? I learn that you're really not in the game. And now I'm probably going to start looking for someone else to write scripts.
Yeah.
Which isn't you. Which is actually giving me some good ideas right now.
Yeah, that genuineness though, right? With yourself.
Yes.
That's like,
if I'm just
really
doing it, if I'm just doing it because if I'm just doing it to get Echo to do it and I really don't want to take ownership of it, well, it's not what we're talking about.
That's going to jam you up big time.
That's going to jam me up big time.
In fact, it's
now
kind
I'm just mad.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's kind of a step backwards, really. Like as far as problem solving within the team kind of thing. But you're going to be mad and resentful. It's like, man, no one's doing their work. No one's taking responsibility. And you're essentially in the same boat, but just one step behind. You're kind of like the problem is the opposite.
Yeah, and I mean, you can take this out to the nth degree as well, where I start taking ownership of so many tasks that I can't handle them all, right? That you can do that, right? And then you go, well, you know what? We're not doing this over here. And so, well, why aren't we getting that done? Because I don't have the capacity, because here's what I'm doing. I'm doing these other 19 things. So that 20th thing, it's not happening. Now, if you want to take ownership of it and make it happen, cool. You got my support. But if not, it's not happening. Yeah. And that's okay.
It's almost like when you kind of visualize it mentally, it's like there's like levels, and the extreme ownership is always on the top. So certain developments can happen. You can take extreme ownership and then like make certain moves, and it'll jam it up even more just because of the moves you made, not because you took extreme ownership or took responsibility. It's because of some moves that you made in solving problems, which is all natural. But at the end of the day, it is on you. Like you have to take responsibility.
You have to truly say, I'm going to take ownership.
Yeah, and believe it. So that again, that genuineness to be like, this is my responsibility. Yes. Genuinely. No.
Yes.
It's easy to be like.
The good example is when someone says, well, you know, one of my subordinates made a mistake, and of course I get it. I take ownership.
Extreme ownership.
I get it. I get it. But really, it was their fault. Yeah. You know, that's where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? The next question is similar. We should jump into the next question.
Yes.
It's going to lead us down the same path of similar conversations.
Okay, next question, very similar. Here it is. My confusion is everyone takes ownership. At what level does that end? Theoretically, the president is the commander-in-chief, so it could take extreme ownership. Who decides who gets fired? How does that decision get made? Is that an example of extreme ownership?
Yeah, so again, this is where we start looking at what this looks like. When does it stop? When something goes wrong, right? When does it stop? So I was trying to apply this to my life. So with the blue on blue, right, that I had. So fratricide, Ramadi, friendly fire incident, and I took ownership of it. Now you got to remember also, people below me in the chain of command said, no, it was my fault. No, it was my fault. I said, no, it wasn't your fault. It was my fault. Now you could look at my boss and go, well, why wouldn't it be your boss's fault? Why wouldn't it be his boss's fault? Why wouldn't it be their boss? Why wouldn't you take that all the way up the chain of command to the President of the United States, who's the senior person in the military chain of command, is the president, and why wouldn't he say, hey, Jocko's unit had a blue on blue, and it's my fault, right? Yeah. Theoretically, like that's what extreme ownership is. Here's the deal. The goal of extreme ownership, it isn't just to take ownership. The goal of extreme ownership is to actually solve the problem. That's what the goal is. The goal isn't to look who to blame. The goal is to get the problem solved. That's what the goal is. It's not about just blaming someone or finding someone to blame. And when you take ownership of it, that is the first step that leads us to solving the problem, but it's not the solution itself. So when you say, it was my fault, the problem doesn't go away. Also, firing people. Firing someone is not necessarily solve the problem. Now, unless that person, a person in the chain of command, has proven to be incompetent or immoral or incapable of doing their job or blatantly negligent, if it's one of those, then cool. That might solve the problem. But most likely, the people just need to be led properly. So here's what happened. My boss listened to me give a debrief. And in the debrief, yes, I took ownership, but I didn't just take ownership and say, oh, cool, now it's gone, because it didn't make the problem disappear. I said, hey, here's the new standard operating procedures that we are going to implement to make sure this never happens again. Okay. So now he sees that I am solving the problem. He sees that I recognize what the problem is. He sees how I'm going to get the problem solved. The problem isn't getting past me. How can he take ownership? It doesn't make it past me. I'm owning it. Now, a good boss is going to say, hey, you know what, Jocko, I get it. And there's definitely I see what you're saying. However, I could have done a better job prepping you guys with training or whatever, right? You know, and I'm not saying that was the case, but everyone can still kind of provide overlapping fields of fire to get a problem solved. Now, like I said, I had taken ownership of the problem and offered the solutions. If I had denied any wrongdoing and blamed other people and not come up with actual solutions, then he probably would have looked at me and been like, you're fired. Right? Because you've got someone now that's incompetent of seeing what the mistakes were, incompetent of figuring out what the solutions are. He needs to fire me. Yeah. He needs to fire me. And the person above him in the chain of command will go, hey, what happened with that fratricide? And he go, oh yeah, the commander out there made the following mistakes and he's obviously incompetent and I fired him. Okay, roger that. Now we put a new person in there and we start moving in that direction. But I solved the problem that he saw, that we all saw, right? Here's the solutions. We're going to use these marking procedures. We're going to use these time distance things. We're going to make sure that this does not happen again. Now, if we go back to the base example, it's one of the examples I use in leadership strategy and tactics of a machine gunner shoots out of his field of fire. Okay, machine gunner shoots out of his field of fire. Maybe the machine gunner says, well, you know, no one told me what the fields of fire were. So it wasn't my fault. And then maybe the fire team leader said, I told him, but he didn't listen. So you got two excuses, right? And then the squad leader says, well, you know, the fire team leader didn't effectively pass the word. So it's not my fault as a squad leader. The fire team leader has not passed the word correctly. And then the platoon commander says, well, the squad leader didn't understand the importance of field of fire, so it's actually his fault. So now we have everyone. No one solved. You notice no one has solved the problem yet. Yeah. And then the task unit commander says, you know, the platoon leader doesn't have good control of his men. So still no one solved the problem. No one has actually implemented a solution. And then the SEAL team commander, the next person in the chain of command, says the task unit didn't, you know, train themselves properly. So still, he's just pointing a finger. It doesn't solve the problem. And then the group commander says the SEAL team commanding officer is out of touch with what his troops are doing. And then the group commander or the admiral says, you know, the group commander's not paying attention to training. So still, no one has solved the problem. All it's doing is blaming. We're just pointing fingers. And then the SOCOM commander looks at the admiral and says the admiral's not obviously driving realistic training, you know, and so he's just blaming. And then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says, you know, obviously SOCOM has no standards, but they still won't do anything. And then the president says the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff doesn't understand what's happening in the field. And then the voters say the president doesn't know how to run the military. And then the president gets voted out. So the president eventually gets fired because of this thing. But that's not what happens. So yeah, if you just pass the blame, and no one takes ownership, that problem continues throughout the whole chain of command. But when people start taking ownership, then the problem gets solved and it doesn't get anywhere. There becomes a limitation where the problem is no longer a problem. So if the machine gunner shoots out of his field of fire and says, you know what, hey, my fault, next time I will confirm that I know my field of fire before pulling the trigger. So that's kind of a solved problem. Mm-hmm. Now, it gets overlapped a little bit because the fire team leader says, listen, I will make sure and I'll be perfectly clear and reinforce and get a read back next time I tell him what his field of fire is. I'll do a better job passing the word. So now you got like a double overlap on the problem being solved. And then the platoon leader says, listen, I should have covered fields of fire more in the rehearsals. So now we got triple. So this is not going to be a problem anymore. Mm-hmm. No one to fire. no one to reprimand. The problem is getting solved. And you could go right up through the chain of command, that the platoon leader says, I'm going to cover it in rehearsals. And the task unit commander says, I'm going to actually go through a briefing on why fields of fire are so important. And you look at all these stacks of people taking ownership, the problem doesn't get out. The problem gets solved. So that's why a problem doesn't make its way through the entire chain of command when people start taking ownership. It gets owned and it gets solved. Now, if I got a bunch of people that are blaming each other, then maybe someone has to get fired. And one of the platoons that I was putting through training had a bad assistant platoon commander. And he caused the platoon to fail multiple training scenarios. And so every time that little assistant platoon commander would get put in charge of an element, he would make bad decisions and screw things up. And now whose fault is that? Okay, so the assistant platoon commander, he's causing the problem, but his boss, I'm barely even talking to the assistant platoon. Sure, I'm telling him, hey, tactically you did this wrong, tactically you did that wrong. But I'm talking to the platoon commander going, hey, is this guy capable? Because he keeps making your whole platoon fail. Now, eventually, the platoon commander has to own that. And the platoon commander who has tried to coach, tried to mentor, tried to give the guy tactical instruction, and he's still not capable, then guess what? The platoon commander takes ownership and says, you know what? You're fired. So he took ownership of that problem. Now, does the task unit commander need to fire the platoon commander? Because not really, because there's no more problem. The problem's gone. And he goes, okay, I get it. You had to fire that guy. So when you take ownership of a problem, maybe it gets another layer up, maybe 2 layers up, but it doesn't just, a problem doesn't just continue forever. Now you can have serious problems where it just continues. I mean, look at Watergate, right? There was a break-in, the trust was lost, and all of a sudden that problem went all the way up through the chain of command, and the president resigns. So if it's bad enough and no one takes ownership, if one of those guys, and I'd have to go into the details of Watergate, but sometimes you see this where someone in the chain of command goes, this was all on me. And then usually people go, wait a second, are you sure? Are you sure your boss didn't know about this? Are you sure that his boss didn't know about it? And that's kind of from what I remember about Watergate, it was, first you got guys going, it was just us. We were acting alone. And then all of a sudden they figure out, no, actually the president knew exactly what was happening. And therefore he's, gonna get punished for it. Yeah. So again, I think the important thing here is taking ownership is not about figuring out who you should blame or who you should fire. Now, it's, even in extreme ownership, I'm talking through that problem in my own head. On the blue on blue, I'm saying I'm trying to figure out who to blame. And I realize that there's one person to blame. It's me. Once I do that, then it's not about okay, now I'm going to blame myself and now we're good. No, it's how do I solve the problem so we can win? That's what ownership is. And that's why, to going back to this original question, when does it stop? It stops when the problems get solved. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Again, just one of those critical elements, which actually is more important when you think about it, solving the problem part of it, more so than it's my fault, it's their fault, or whatever. Because if we didn't have this instinctual blaming self, or what do you call it, defensive
mechanisms,
that it'd just be way different. So, but since that is a natural thing, it's kind of like it has to be part of extreme ownership. It just has to be for you to be compelled to solve the problem. If you believe, for real believe, not,
yes.
I'm going to create
if I just go, ooh, this is my fault, and that's it, and I don't really believe that I can solve the problem. Yeah. It's like this, one of the guys at Echelon Front was talking to a client the other day, and one of the senior people one of the senior executives said, I've got 1,200 people that work for me. I can't be responsible for what they do when they make a mistake. And here's the deal: when you have that attitude, you're right. You can't do anything. And this goes back, I talked about it with Daryl Cooper on the Abu Ghraib thing. If the leadership says, you know what, the people that are in the prison that are guarding the insurgents that were captured, if they do something, if they abuse those prisoners, that's not on me. That's somebody on the front line. If you have that attitude, then yeah, you're going to have problems. But if you have the attitude, hey, what happens on the front line is my responsibility, then guess what you do? You clarify your commander's intent. You make sure that everyone understands what the rules of engagement are. You make sure that everyone understands what the goal of having these people in these situations are. You make sure they understand what happens if they get caught or what happens if they get caught abusing prisoners, what that's going to look like, what that's going to do to the war effort. You do all these things to mitigate that. That's what you do. But when you think, well, of course I'm responsible, but I'm not really responsible.
Right, yeah.
You don't take the actions necessary. You don't take that preemptive ownership to solve those problems. And then when something does go wrong, if you throw up your hands and go, I can't control what's happening on the front line, I'm firing you immediately. I'm firing you in 10 seconds. If someone happens to the front line and I talk to the leader and I say, your front line people did X, Y, and Z wrong, and they go, hey, you know what? I can't control what's happening on the front line. I'm like, cool, you're fired. You know what I mean? Like if that's your attitude, I want someone that says, hey, you know what? Here's the things that I'm implementing, make sure that doesn't happen again. Here's the course I'm running. Here's the oversight I'm putting in here, X, Y, Z to solve those problems. That's what I'm going to do. And I go, okay, great. You're obviously taking ownership of the problem. I'll take, I'm going to take ownership. Maybe I can provide you this or that to help you. But then once it gets there, that problem doesn't continue on indefinitely. Right. Yeah. We get it solved. That's the beauty of extreme ownership, is that the problem gets solved.
So so when you fire a guy or whatever, theoretically, it's kind of like you're firing him because, like the example you just said right there with the guy who has that attitude, right? Of, I don't control this. You fire him essentially because he's going to continue to either allow or be a problem. That's going to continue.
Yes, it's going to continue
kind of thing. So like getting rid of him, replacing him, whatever, that essentially solves a root of a problem.
Yes.
Bigger problem. So what do you, because every once in a while you'll find a situation, company, whatever, where they'll fire a guy just as punishment. Like it's not necessarily that given the particular circumstance where he'll continue to be a problem. It's not that kind of situation, or it's not obvious that it's that kind of situation, but it's like, we need someone's head for this mistake,
Absolutely.
like that kind of stuff or whatever. Like, how would you, I don't know, how would you approach
taking
that?
extreme ownership does not prevent you from getting fired.
Yeah.
We should be perfectly clear about that. I will tell you that in my opinion, you have a better chance of not getting fired if you take ownership than if you put your hands up or point fingers at other people. Yeah. Either you put your hands up and say, well, there's nothing I could do about it. That was the front lines. That's not me. Yeah. I'm firing you. If you say, well, it wasn't my fault. It was the junior leader that directed that. Oh, so are you going to fire that leader? Or are you going to train him? Are you going to do something different? Are you going to implement some standard operating procedures so that can happen? Or are you just saying you can't control it? Because if you can't control it, I don't need you here.
Right.
So yes, sometimes people take ownership and they're getting fired anyways. I will say this, if they're proactively, really, truly taking ownership of what is happening, if they're taking preemptive ownership, they're not going to be sitting in that position in the first place, because whatever things are unfolding, they go, man, if we get caught doing that, I'm going to be the one responsible for it. I own this. And so, hey, frontline, you can't do that. Here's the training. Here's the right protocol. Here's how you handle those situations, and don't ever do that again. And they go, oh, okay. And now when the boss comes to me and says, hey, we had this just flare up, I go, yeah, here's what I did about it. I'm aware of what's happening. I already got it under wraps, boss. And I go, oh, okay, cool, thanks. But if I go, well, all that stuff was happening and I never did anything about it and I didn't know about it, guess what? Expect to get fired. Extreme ownership does not prevent you from getting fired post-mortem. You caused a problem. You allowed a problem to happen under your command. You have a better chance of not getting fired if you take ownership of it. But if you have an egregious thing happen and it's on your watch, you might get fired. And if you make excuses, if you think you can kind of weasel your way out of it, you're going to get fired as well. You're just going to look like a weasel.
It's funny, like I have this vision of the guy, who gets fired, right? And on his way out, he has this, what do you call it? Like a little basket of his stuff, that classic image. Yeah. And he's like, but I took extreme ownership. Ownership.
You should have taken extreme ownership prior to this happening.
And look, it's funny. Okay, remember what I said, how extreme ownership is always on the top, right? Like no matter the problem. even that, let's say I got fired, I took extreme ownership. It was my fault, fully believed it, everything. And then I got fired still, right? Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I'm like mad at extreme ownership. I took extreme ownership. It didn't work. Got fired. Aren't you sort of blaming extreme ownership now? Kind of thing?
Yes, I guess it is. In a strange world, you are correct. Yeah, you are now blaming extreme ownership. But what you're really doing is you're trying to take ownership after the fact. That's why it's important to have the attitude of extreme ownership. That's the problem with, and this is what I wrote about in Leadership Strategy and Tactics. The problem with extreme ownership is that it's post-mortem. It's after the fact. Preemptive ownership is, hey, you take ownership of everything that's going on so you prevent these problems from occurring.
Yeah.
Now, if they occur, I will promise you the best thing you can do is say, here's the problem, here's the mistakes I made, here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Yeah. That is your best method of survival. And if you don't do that, or if you do that, it's no, as I just said, it's no guarantee that you're not going to get fired because you still might get fired. But if you run in there and you make a bunch of excuses, I mean, yeah.
No good.
Check.
Next question. Jocko, heard General Mattis say that he looks for initiative and aggressiveness in NCOs. I'm not a naturally aggressive leader. Do you believe leaders should be aggressive by nature? When to be aggressive, or when do you be aggressive? Does it come off as fake if it's not natural?
So, obviously this is something we talk about all the time, is that being default aggressive is good for leaders. Yes, that is a true statement. There's a dichotomy, obviously, because you can be too aggressive and then things go wrong and things go bad and things don't work. And yes, there are some people that are, let's say, more aggressive by nature. And then let's also remember that being aggressive means a lot more than just being loud, brash, and in your face, right? That is the stereotypical thing that we think of when we think of, oh, that guy's really aggressive. You think this guy's in your face, he's yelling, he's, pushing people over. That is not the type of aggressiveness that you need to be an effective leader. You don't need to be a loudmouth. You don't need to be brash. You don't need to get in people's faces. What being aggressive means is taking action. That's the kind of aggressiveness that I'm talking about. That's the kind of aggressiveness that General Mattis is talking about. And, the definition, I actually wrote this down, the definition of aggressive, or one of the definitions of being aggressive, is forceful and sometimes overly assertive pursuit of one's aims. So, first of all, forceful we get, right? Sometimes overly assertive means sometimes that you have to go a little bit harder. And here's why that's important. Because listen, in combat, almost nothing will happen the way you want it to if you don't force it that way. Right? You are coming against a powerful force, the enemy, nature, time. There's all kinds of things that are going against you. It's a losing battle. And if you don't use force of will, then you're not going to get it done. You have to be aggressive and make things happen. I remember, so we all got interviewed after we came home from Ramadi, and I remember I was listening to Seth Stone get interviewed, and they were just trying to capture whatever information, moments, historical accounts of what had happened in Ramadi. And Seth said something along the lines of, every operation we did, you could feel Jocko beating his head against the wall to make things happen. And of course I laughed. But from his perspective, and it's a good perspective and it's an accurate perspective, nothing just kind of, that fell into my lap. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in combat. It just doesn't happen in combat. And so, yes, this idea that you're going to be aggressive is very important. But if you think to yourself, well, okay, look, I'm not the type of person that likes to be a loudmouth, likes to shout, likes to yell. Cool, good. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be that way. What it means is you need to make things happen. That's what it means. And it can be, this is the good thing about being aggressive. Sure, there's certain parts of your nature that are aggressive, but it can also be trained. You can start to think with an aggressive mindset, which is, I am going to take action. I'm going to overcome obstacles. I'm going to push through roadblocks. I'm not going to take no for an answer. And those are things that you can train. And how do you train them? Look, when you hit an obstacle, you look at it, you shake your head and you go, cool, let's go. Let's figure this out. There's so often times where people, they get told no or they hit an obstacle and it's game over for them. They're just done. They're done training. They're over it. Mm-hmm. And your attitude, you have to go, okay, little roadblock, cool. How am I going to get through it? How am I going to get around it? And I used to put people, so to train people to be more aggressive, regardless of what they're, and believe me, I had guys, SEAL officers that were coming through that, or SEAL chiefs that were coming through, real passive guys, quiet guys, not the type of person that you would figure, that guy's aggressive. You wouldn't characterize them as that. Mm-hmm. But what I would do is put them in situations where if they didn't make aggressive decisions to make things happen, they were going to get annihilated. Put them in training scenarios like that. Okay. Oh, you want to sit here and you want to wait? Like you're getting attacked and you want to sit here and you want to wait. You don't want to make a decision? Cool. In 16 minutes, I will have everyone in your task unit dead. We will kill them all with paintball. If you, and so they learn that. And I go, well, what do you think happened? And they'd say, well, we started to get surrounded. And I go, and what did you do? Well, we held position. Okay, how long did you hold position for? Oh, we held it for a while. And what did the enemy do? Well, they started to maneuver. And then what'd you do? Well, we held position. And then what'd the enemy do? Well, they maneuvered more. And then what'd you do? I held position. And then we started taking casualties. And then the enemy maneuvered, and then they closed the distance, and then they took us out. Okay, what do you think would have been better? Well, perhaps when it first started, before they had us enveloped, I could have made a maneuver to get to another building with some more high ground. That sounds like a great idea. Next time, why don't you be a little bit more aggressive in making things happen? Okay, put them in the same scenario. They get a little bit more aggressive. They realize that it serves its function, and they start to develop the attitude, and they start to understand what a lack of aggression will get you, because that's an important thing to know, right? It's not just the carrot, it's the stick. Cool, if I do this aggressive thing, it'll be rewarding. If I don't do something aggressive, we're going to get annihilated. So here's the other thing that you got to be ready for. So if you're a person that you lean towards being passive, you've got to start to lean towards being aggressive. And here's the thing that you got to remember. You're going to make mistakes. Because when you're aggressive, you're taking more risk. And often you're taking more risk. Now, if you've played out the whole matrix of being passive versus being aggressive, I will tell you that being aggressive is the one that ends up on top. But there are scenarios where your aggressiveness ends up costing you a little bit. That absolutely happens. It happens in business. It happens in life. It happens on the battlefield. But overall, being aggressive is this is where the idea of aggressive has to be your default mode. This is exactly why aggression has to be your default mode. Mm-hmm. Your default mode is aggressive. If your default mode is aggressive and it's not the right answer, you just use the other answer, right? Your default mode is aggressive. That's why I originally said to these young SEAL officers, your default mode has to be aggressive. So if you're not sure if you should stay or you should go to the default, which is going to be aggressive, because 9 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, that's going to be a better move than sitting on your ass and doing nothing. That's what's going to get you killed. So your default mode is to go. Now, do you always go with your default mode? No, you don't always go with it. It's the default mode. But occasionally you go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go to the default mode. You pull the setting out and you go into the other mode.
Customize it a little
bit. Yeah, you
bit.
Customize a little bit for that particular situation. But your default mode is I'm going to be aggressive. And that's the odds. You want the odds. You want to stack the odds in your favor.
What is Jason Gardner puts it kind of a cool, like, good way to just really wrap your head around, like, being in a default mode. Something along the lines of, like, it's easier or it's better to, like, have to pull someone back than have to push them forward.
It's a million times easier to have to pull the reins in on someone, on an element, on a team, on a leader, on a person. It's a million times easier to go, all right, hey, come on back. Right. You're going too hard. Then going, hey, you need to get out there. Yeah. Because, by the way, I mean, if you think about this from like an actual event unfolding. If an event unfolds and you're the person that's on point and you don't react to it properly, that event needs to make it through you to me before I can now assess what I think you should do and then tell you to go do it and then kick you in the ass so you go do it. I don't want that. We already lost. I want you to go, hey, we just got this event started unfolding. I'm on it. And you look back at me, hey, Jocko, I'm solving this problem right now. Oh, what's the problem? Right? I don't even know what the problem is yet. You're already solving it. That's what I want. And if I happen to occasionally have to pull the reins on you, I'm more than happy to pull the reins on you. So yes, that's universal. It's easier to lead someone that you have to pull the reins on than you have to push. We'd rather pull back than push forward. And that idea of being aggressive is part of that. So I want all my subordinate leaders to be aggressive. And as a leader, I know that my subordinates are going to make mistakes while they're learning to be aggressive. And even when they're being aggressive, and they're considered fully trained and fully ready, they're still going to make mistakes. I'm still going to make mistakes being aggressive. I'm going to make mistakes, but we're going to play the odds. And the odds are you be aggressive. I'm trying to think of a good blackjack. You ever play blackjack before?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I mean, like there's, dealers showing a whatever. Dealers showing 20 and you're showing a 14. You got to hit it. Like that's the odds. The odds are you got to hit it. Dealers showing a 14 and you're showing a 14. You got to hold. Let the dealer take the hit.
Do they call it? I forget do they call it showing 20? Because one is down, one is up, right? Do they call that showing 20? Let's say you have a 10 or
because you don't know what the other card is.
Right, you just assume
assume that it's a 10.
So he's showing 20. Okay.
Man, I haven't played blackjack in a while. I can't believe I'm like struggling with my thought process around blackjack around the numbers.
No, that's how, bro. It was more of a terminology situation.
Yeah, but you play the odds.
Yeah,
and there's rules when you're playing the odds in blackjack. There's rules of what you hit and what you don't, and you stick with the rules. The odds are going to be on your side.
Yeah.
More than if you don't. If you just sit back, and so we're playing the odds. We're playing the odds with leadership. And the odds are your default mode. It's not that you never come out of default mode. The odds are you be aggressive. So back to this question here. Let's another couple things in this question. When to be aggressive? Look, the default mode is be aggressive. And sometimes you look at it and you go, now's not the time. Does it come off as fake or not natural? Hey, it's not. Being aggressive from this perspective isn't how you're acting. It's the decisions that you're making. It's the decision. I was working with a client yesterday, and we were talking about data. I think it was a client call or it was another. Yeah, it was about data. And it was actually the very similar question. Hey, I'm not very aggressive and I'm more of a data guy and I like numbers and that's how I roll. And yet I'm not getting recognized. And I was like, cool. Get aggressive with your data. Put your data together and present it up the chain of command. Not to say, hey, look at me, but to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm doing. You're being aggressive with your data. You're showing them what's happening because the guy wasn't getting the recognition that he needed, right? And so that meant his senior leadership didn't know what he was doing, which meant he's not getting the resources that he needs to do his job. And instead of being like, hey, this is what I need, because he's not an aggressive guy, he's sitting back and just getting resources stripped away from him. I said, cool, you're a data guy. Record the data of what you're doing, present it, and let the data speak. Get default aggressive with your data. Did I miss anything here? Yeah, so it's not natural. Yeah, I mean, if you all of a sudden start to try and act, this new way.
Yeah, Brad, don't do that.
Yeah, it's probably not going to go good. Now, do you sometimes have to learn like, okay, you know what? I got to stand up and say something. I got to put word out, right? Yeah. And I watched many guys in my career go through the transition of being a little bit less aggressive, and they realize, you know what? I'm in charge of this thing. I got to go put the word out. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, those kind of, for lack of a better term, superficial personality traits that are aggressive. Some people say, oh, well, that's aggressive,
yes.
Where there's more depth to it. We're like, because again, like, you can think of like a I don't know, some fictional or maybe even not fictional, like maybe Japanese business tycoon who doesn't say nothing really,
Oh,
but he's making aggressive moves. Like
Yes.
that's an aggressive guy. Kind of,
That's true.
it goes deep. And then, a guy who, how you were saying, like he yells and screams and has a loud voice or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, if that's your personality, that's going to land for sure. But it's more about the decisions you make. If
Well,
you
when
try
you
to
say it's going to land, what do you mean? Because that might just make a bunch of people angry.
right. Sometimes, well, it depends on what you're yelling and screaming for
Got it.
sure.
But what you're saying is there could be someone that's loud and scream, but they're using that to cover the fact that they're actually not making any moves.
Potentially, yes.
So the yelling and screaming has very little to do with aggressive movement on the battlefield.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
Oh, I'm saying there's more depth to it. But the point actually is that
You should have just taken that point because that was a good point. You should have taken that one and run with it. But I'll let you continue.
This one is probably less gloriful, but nonetheless, if because he's concerned about faking it or coming off as fake, where if you're focused on those like superficial elements of your personality being aggressive, that's the part they're going to smell as fake if you're trying to change that part
For
of
sure.
it. Like, oh, this bro, we used to have this in 7th grade. He was, I don't know, I think it's like a music teacher. I don't know, something.
Super aggressive music teacher.
He was like a nice dude, like really nice. And
there's not too many stereotypical hyper aggressive music teachers.
No, man, he wasn't.
I had an assistant platoon commander and aggressive, great guy. And he, I didn't, as I got to know him, and I was like, so what'd you study in college? And he's like, percussion.
Yeah, man. Dig it.
what are you talking about? I was like, what, concussion? What? He's like, percussion, drumming.
Yeah.
He started drumming in college.
Dang.
Which is just kind
going
of
deep in percussion.
Yeah. I didn't know you could major in percussion. I mean, I guess, but anyways.
The history of percussion.
Yeah.
Properties of percussion.
My point is, had he become a music teacher, he probably
aggressive.
would have been because he was an aggressive assistant platoon commander.
Yeah,
had to pull the reins on him sometimes. He'd be out there getting after it.
This guy was not aggressive at all. He was like a nice guy trying to please everyone, short term and long term kind of thing, which didn't really work with. I'm pretty sure it was 7th grade. So he was like, I remember guys would just run circles around him, like people wouldn't listen and all this stuff. He had trouble controlling the class, we'll say that. And then at one time he tried to switch his personality.
Yeah.
One time he dropped a book. You know how like sometimes when you drop a big book, yeah, sometimes when it hits correctly, it's like boom, it's like a fire. So one time, bro, he tried to do that and it didn't make the sound, and like everyone was like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" He's like looking at everybody with his eyes all big. Nonetheless, I think he got aggressive one day and people like shut up and were like, "Hey, this guy's like." You know how when someone's never aggressive and then they start yelling, you're like, everyone kind of bees quiet, like, dang, this guy's yelling. So I think he might have got a small little payoff one day. And then from then on, he started to try to be like aggressive, but everyone could smell it on him. Like, bro, that's not even your thing. So it worked against him. Yeah, everyone was kind of laughing at him. Now he's like a weirdo.
Yep. So no need to do that.
No need.
Don't be throwing the music book on the table.
No. The big textbook. It was on the floor too. But yeah, it didn't work, unfortunately.
Next question. So this question is actually one of them that I got from EF Online. So EF Online, since the big lockdown in the world, we've pushed a lot of resources and time and effort into EF Online. It was actually something that we were working on, so it's good timing. But EF Online used to be a relatively static training platform, really aimed at enterprise clients. So big companies would train their people based on the leadership principles, but it's a powerful tool. And so with the lockdown, we've been working with a lot of our clients through webinars. So what we've really kind of reformulated and are reattacking this online world. And so we're doing a bunch of live webinars, we're doing Q&A sessions, we got chats going on, we've got a forum. So we got all kinds of things that are happening. What it's doing is now we got like a community of people that are on there all the time. They're asking us questions. It's just awesome. And so one of the questions that I got asked was from a police officer who was basically talking about he's got some complainers. Or he was talking about one complainer in particular. And the question was, what advice do you have for dealing with that one officer on your team that is the Debbie Downer? They complain about everything. You know the one, no matter what you ask the team to do, that one guy or gal that sucks all the energy out of the room, the buzzkill. So I thought that this was a good question, and I thought it was a good question because everybody knows that everybody knows that person so much that there's a term for it, Debbie Downer. Right? There's a pre-existing term for that person that's complaining and being negative about everything.
Official.
So a couple, and what's really cool about doing this stuff online is now, right now I'm reading the question. When I'm doing this, we're the person's there. Like we're talking face to. I mean, it's not face to face, but it's face to face because you're on the interwebs, and I'm looking right at the person. They're looking right at me, and so it's very cool. You're having a conversation. The one thing that's negative about this podcast is, well, it's us reading our best interpretation of a question through the interwebs, whereas EF Online, you can,
they can
actually clarify. You can talk. You can get details, and it makes it really cool. So back to this question, Debbie Downer. So leadership strategy and tactics, I talked about one of the solutions that I have for a lot of different leadership problems is actually putting people in charge. So you put somebody in charge of a mission, of a project, of a task, and they want to complain about it. Cool, they can complain about themselves because they're the one that's running it. Mm-hmm. So that's one option, and that option works a lot, right? Sometimes it might not work. Sometimes it might not be feasible. Mm-hmm. You can't take maybe a junior person and put them in charge of a giant project because it's just the way the responsibility has been doled out from the chain of command. You're not allowed to put Private Jackson in charge of or Private Debbie Downer in charge of something. So here's another, and this is another option another thing that you can do, and this is a really incredibly brilliant solution. Mm-hmm. Listen to them. Right? Actually listen to what they have to say. So sometimes people complain because they complain so much, no one actually ever listens to them, and they just keep doing it, and it has no impact. The only impact that it has is it gives them a little good feeling because they got to put up a little protest, right? They got to throw a little negative shot at the man, at the system, at the mission, at the bar. They get to just throw this little complaint out. And look, it's kind of within the rules, right? Like it's almost bad to say, hey, I don't want to hear any complaints, right? Right. So you complain and you get away with it.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. They got to get this passive aggressive little complaining going on. So one thing you can do is actually listen to what they say. Actually say, oh, you know what, Echo? Actually, can you meet me after this meeting? I want to actually dig down and see what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden they're thrown for a loop. Just that right there can solve the problem. And then when they come in, when you talk to them, actually write down what they are talking about. So those are two solution things. And then, again, because EF Online is live and I'm actually talking to the person that's asking me this question. So, I said, well, hey, what's going on? And I started digging into it a little bit. And the complaint was again, this was the police department. The complaint was about the current mission that was happening. Mm-hmm. And the mission that the mission that his squad had been in charge of had been shifted. And this person, well, that's the main thing that this person was complaining about. Why are we doing this? This should be someone else, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And, it was a hard mission. And then as I'm talking to the leader actually says, like, well, I didn't like the mission either. So think about that.
Interesting.
Think about that. The leader didn't like the mission, and one of the subordinates is complaining about it. And I'm saying, of course you're going to have people complaining about the mission. You don't even like the mission. You don't even like the mission. And now you're surprised that some of your subordinates are complaining about, and one in particular that always complains anyways is complaining about something that you don't even like.
Oh, yeah.
So, here's the deal. Like I said, talk to the complainer, write down their complaints, and then actually give some responses or reasons that explain why things are happening the way they are happening. Actually give explanations for what that individual is complaining about. And by the way, if you don't have good explanations, then go get them. Go up your chain of command and say, hey boss, here's what's going on. This is what some of my troops are saying, and I agree with these parts. Can we get some explanations behind this? So it's like when we got to Ramadi, you're going to be working with Iraqi soldiers. I got all kinds of complaints about that out of the gate. And as I've said many times before, I was the chief complainer for about 3 minutes before I said, okay, why are we actually doing this? Let me think about this. And I didn't have to ask this up in my chain of command because I figured out why we were doing it. It was what we needed to do to win the war. And so then I was able to explain, you want to complain? Cool, I accept your complaint. I agreed with it a minute ago. Here's the solution I came to. Here's the answer. Here's why we're doing this. And all of a sudden, the complaints are going to go down. And then if you got people that are complaining about things, you give them the answer and you'll move forward. That's why I don't look at complaining as a negative thing necessarily. And by the way, if complaining is happening and I let it continue to happen, whose fault is that? Is it Debbie Downer's fault? Is it?
Kinda.
No. I almost just hucked a knife at you.
Yeah, no. It feels like it. That's why it's short term.
You can be like, oh yeah, I can't believe Debbie Downer.
All you got to do is not complain.
Yeah, just shut up. Don't complain. No, actually, I own this. Oh, one of my subordinates is complaining? Okay, cool. How can I solve this? How about we figure out, research what the complaints are about, and not only does it stop them from complaining, but I'm actually building relationships with the team because I'm being responsive to what their complaints are. And when I do that, I make the team tighter and I make the operational capability of the team higher, and now we can do a better job accomplishing our mission. So when you get a complainer, try listening to what the complaints are. You can try putting them in charge. You can give them explanations as to why the things they're complaining about aren't happening. Because if I got my team complaining, I'm going to assume that there's some validity to it. And if there's no validity to it, well then cool. You come to me with a complaint that's completely invalid, and I show you, oh yeah, here's why your complaint's invalid, because this, and this. So now you're complaining about something that is not true, right? You're not going to continue down that road. You're going to go, oh, I didn't realize that, boss. Or you're going to say, well, if that's true, boss, then what about this? And I go, okay, let me figure that one out for you. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It kind of goes along with like how you'd say, like when you pull the thread, like the beginning of that thread is just the complaint, right? But when you start pulling the thread all the way out, it's kind of like, oh shoot, there's some valid stuff in here. But in a different situation, it could be that, yeah, this guy's just a complainer. There's answers to all of this stuff that may be like, I don't know, maybe it's his laziness or his whatever, like all invalid complaints. When you pull out that thread, it's like you can see that too.
Right. Yeah, there could be valid. It could be invalid.
Yeah.
Pull the thread, find the answer to that,
listen to him,
and give it to him.
Yeah.
Listening. The most underrated tool of leadership, your ears.
But you can kind of, I mean, it's not like so like ludicrous though, like to dismiss a complainer. It's not that, because like how you said, everyone knows a Debbie Downer, and man, after a while the complaint can be valid or invalid. It's kind of like, man, you just complain so much, you just dismiss them already,
Yes.
Literally like a Debbie Downer. I'm thinking
but the only way to break them of that, they've gotten into that habit because their complaints don't have any they don't have any outcome. They don't have any result. The only thing they are is a little
payoff.
Yeah, a little pay. What's that thing? Oh, the little dopamine hit when I say, this is the dumbest mission we've ever done.
Yeah.
And that's it. It just makes me feel good. Everyone heard me. Everyone knows that I think this is dumb. And now I'm just going to continue going through the motions of whatever, but I'm being negative and I'm dragging other people down, but at least I got mine.
Yeah.
And the habit forms that. Yeah. And you can break that habit. When someone goes, oh, this is the dumbest mission I've ever seen. Hey, Echo, what part of the mission do you think is dumb? Let me, what part? Oh, let me get my notebook and write this down. Yeah. What do you got? It's another thing on EF Online. I've been doing these leadership primers of saying, like, hey, here's a little thing to think about, right? When you for the reason I use this word leadership primer. So Hackworth has a book called Vietnam Primer.
Sure.
Get people ready. It was written in like whatever 68
Hell yeah.
when guys were getting ready to go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And so he wrote Vietnam Primer to give them a heads up, get them mind right, give them some good tips for how that to be ready to deploy. Well, think about this. Think if you were walking to your house and there was a bad guy in there, a criminal had broken in, and as soon as you walked in, he threw a punch at you, or he ran at you, or let's not go that. When you walked in, he's confronting you.
Yeah.
Think if 10 seconds before you walked in, you got the message that said, "Hey, when you walk in here, there's a bad guy in your house."
Yeah.
You would respond way better.
Yeah.
So the leadership primer, EF Online, the leadership primer is just me saying, "Hey, here's a little something to think about today. Here's a little something to put you." And one of the leadership primers I did the other day was get a notebook. Get a notebook, a little notebook. Keep it in your pocket. When somebody tells you something, up the chain or down the chain of command, get out your notebook and write it down.
Yeah.
You know how powerful that is?
Yeah.
Think of it from either direction. Think of you're my subordinate and you tell me something and I get out my notebook and write it down. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Like, dang, this guy cares.
Yep. Now, what if you're my boss and you say, "Hey, Jocko, can you take care of XYZ?" And I go, "Yes, no problem, sir." And I get out my notebook and write it down. What are you thinking?
Same thing.
Now, your initial thought is like, of course, it's positive. I actually have to follow through. I can't just like take notebooks and throw them away every day, right? So you have to actually take your notes and log them down. But that's a little tool that you can use. You wouldn't be able to. When I was in the teams, you wouldn't be able to find me without a notebook. You would not be able to find me without a notebook. And by the way, I have a good memory too. I have a good memory. It doesn't matter. When you tell me something, I'm going to write it down because I don't want to forget it, and B, I want you to know that I got you. And you know what's cool? 3 weeks goes by and I go, "Hey, Echo, you remember you were asking me about this piece of gear that you thought we should have? Here's the research. We actually have them ordered."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Boom. Yeah. Or you're my boss and I say, "Hey, boss, 3 weeks ago you mentioned this to me off the cuff. You said you wanted to know how many guys I had qualified for this thing and how many we're going to have ready for deployment. I just want to let you know the number is 12 right now, and I'm going to have 17 when we go on deployment."
Yeah.
And the boss goes, "Man,
it's good."
So what does that mean? Does that mean I'm kissing my boss's ass? No. It means, first of all, he had a reason for asking me that. And second of all, his trust in me just went up a little bit.
Yeah, fully.
In both directions.
Yeah.
So that's the point here. When someone starts complaining to you, look, let's face it, a lot of time these complaints, they're throwaway comments.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're not letting them get thrown away.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting out the notebook on that.
Yeah.
So, little leadership primer. Carry a notebook with you. Something happens, write it down. And I actually, you could say, yeah, you could just get out your phone and go into the notes thing. But I kind of don't agree with that. Let's face it, when people pull out their phone, unless you go, hold on, if you're going to pull out your phone and make a note in your phone, you got to tell them what you're doing. You got to say, hold on a second, let me write that. Let me put that in my notes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they think, oh, cool, I'm telling him a major problem I've got, and he's shooting a text.
Yeah. Like getting bored with it.
He's checking the gram. So, yes, listen to your complaint. Well, overall, listen. When people have complaints, listen, dig down, pull the thread. Put them in charge, that's an option, but also listen, pull the thread, dig down, find the solution, find the reason, and explain it to them.
Yeah. That note-taking thing, I can't help but, and this is just an extreme version of it, so which I think you kind of like almost implied a little bit there, where, you know how like on the movie, I don't know which one, all of them, I don't know, you have the little, you have the powerful boss walking around, and the little, note-taker taking everything, writing every little thing down, kind of thing. Don't be that guy writing everything down. No. Because it's kind of like, bro, this guy's just a weirdo note-taker.
In fact, we're actually writing down positive things, right? Now, I guess a complaint's not a positive thing, but it's positive that you're saying, oh, wait a second, there's a problem. There's something you don't understand. Cool, we're gonna write this down.
Yeah, important stuff, and it almost goes back to like opening your mouth to begin with. Like you only say important stuff. Don't just blah, blah, blah all the time. Same thing with the note-taking almost kind of thing where if you're this, especially if you're a subordinate, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, let me take some notes on. And
also, let me make this perfectly clear. You're not taking notes so that you can prove to them that you're listening. You're actually taking notes so you can log down what they're saying and you can pull the string on it either direction.
Right.
That's what you're doing. You're not doing it so, oh, cool, I'm going to make a good impression. No, you're doing it because it's going to it's going to make you do a better job so you can better support the guys above you and below you in the chain of command so that we can win.
Bro, that's such a good point, because that's that caricature in the movie who's taking notes, all like the little subordinate taking too many notes.
I knew guys that would write things down and never do anything with them.
Yeah,
I have less respect for you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
If
and
you
that's
write it down, man, I expect some action.
Yeah,
right. I expect some action.
Oh yeah, but that's the point, right? Where that's why that character exists in the movie, because he's displayed and shown as a kiss ass guy, writing every little thing down, and you could tell that's his whole intention, is to be the kiss ass. It's like to display that kind of thing, where. And that's what it comes down to, like your actual intention. Because like you always said, like, man, people can smell that on you. If you're like there if you have some ulterior motive or whatever.
Intention has a strong smell.
Yes, it does.
You can quote me on that. Intention has a strong smell. And if your intention, what your intention is, will be smelled by the people around you.
Oh, yeah. And that's how it's going to look. It has a look, too.
It has a look, but the smell is more pungent.
Yes,
in both directions.
Sure
in both directions, by the way. Yeah. When my intention is to take care of you, that is felt.
Yeah.
It's smelt and it's pungent. If my intention is to kiss your ass, you can smell that just as well.
Smell it from a mile away. Cool. Yes, agree. Next question. This is going to sound like a strange question, but how would you advise mentally preparing for the horrors of war? Like if you knew someone you cared about was going to be on the front lines, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to detach. I would tell them to detach. I would tell them to do their job, but don't get all caught up in it. Because that's what you have to do. If you're going to the front lines and right now there's a bunch of doctors and nurses going to the front lines in hospitals, and that can be emotionally overwhelming. Look, they do that for a living, but when you see overcrowded or whatever's happening, you can see where people might be overwhelmed by that, or their health at risk, so they're overwhelmed by that. So do your job, but you got to stay detached from it. Don't get all caught up in it. And also I would tell them, look, the emotions that you're going to have are okay. And it's normal. You're going to feel scared. You're going to feel disgusted. You're going to feel horrified. You're going to feel sick. All those things are normal. They're normal feelings that you're going to have when you are seeing this side of humanity for the first time. I would tell them to write down and talk about what they see, what they hear, what they feel with other people, because if you try and keep them contained inside your own head, you won't process them as well. When you write things down, it forces you to think through them. When you talk about it with other people, you get some of that out of your system. So I think that's powerful. Separate work from home, right? So you're going to go in this horrible place. Don't bring that home with you. How do you do that? Change out of your uniform. Put your flip-flops on. Put your shorts on and your t-shirt when you get home. Don't wear your uniform. Don't wear your police uniform. Don't wear your doctors. Don't wear your scrubs home. Take them off. Don't wear your EMT uniform home. Don't do that. Change. And then compartmentalize, because you gotta compartmentalize these bad things. And I guess maybe that could be construed in a negative way. Like I'm saying, lock down, put them in a compartment and put them away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying separate. Because what I'm saying, I'm not saying put things in a box and lock them there. I'm not saying that at all. I'm actually saying the opposite. Write about them, talk about them with your friends, talk about what you experienced, what you felt, all that stuff. It's going to make you feel better. But keep it separate from people that don't have that experience, right? So you don't want to drag home the war to your wife and your kids. You don't want to drag home the ER to your wife and your kids. You don't want to drag home the perpetrators and the horrible things you see as a police officer, you don't want to drag those home every day. Mm-hmm. So compartmentalize. And I think those are the things that I've done that I think have helped me.
Yes, sir.
All right, this next question. You mind if I read this next question?
I don't mind.
This next question is kind of, it's a good question. I think we're going to get a lot out of it, but it's a little bit of a longer question. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to actually end up reading it, I think, twice. First time I'm just going to read it through. Here we go. I've been working on asking you this question for over a year, and this is the best way I think I can articulate it. Everything I say falls on deaf ears. I try to give advice when asked or if someone is in trouble, and they don't listen to the sound advice. Then later, I try to get them to listen to someone else that might have more credibility, an author or podcaster, philosopher, etc., and they still won't listen. They tried their hardest to make what solutions I'm trying to give don't not apply to them because of X, Y, and Z. All excuses, almost as if they are too good to implement the advice because it came from me and me alone. Literally solving people's problems, and they are deliberately not listening. It's not how I present the information they should use. My tonality is just fine. It's almost as if they won't listen because they know I'm right. And they want to prove I'm wrong by not giving me the respect. I feel the majority of people see me as lesser, not worthy of respect or listening to, even though I use such obvious logic. These people continuously try to exercise power over me defiantly. An extreme, non-influential presence, even with logic, tact, respectfulness. No one wants to listen to me. People just refuse to even respectfully move out of the way when I'm trying to get around them. Not even strangers, people I live with. I don't understand what it is about me that most people don't respect. Everyone seems to have the attitude to defy or oppose everything I say. No matter the circumstances, whether I'm trying my best to lead, give advice, etc., people won't listen to me. They won't get behind me. I lack so much influence. It's not funny. I try, but to no avail. What do you think? So, look, it's a rough situation, right?
Yes.
I feel for the individual in that situation. I feel, I think, imagine the frustration that you feel being in that position where you're just no one's listening to you. That being said, we have a situation here where you can see a lot of it is based on everyone else's problems and not mine. So it starts off, everything I say falls on deaf ears. So even that statement right there, out of the gate, it's not what I'm saying. It's that they are deaf.
Right. Yeah.
So that right there is just, we're opening salvo is, you're not listening to me. Then I try to give advice when asked or if someone is in trouble and they don't listen to sound advice. Again, whose fault is that? I'm giving you sound advice and everyone else, they're not listening. Continues on. Then I try to get them to listen to someone else that might have more credibility, an author or podcaster, philosopher, and they still won't listen. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I wonder what that sounds like. Right?
Yes,
I imagine that it sounds something like, Hackworth says the exact same thing as me. Or you might want to listen to some Sam Harris. Because if you listen to some Sam Harris, you listen to some Tim Ferriss, you'll see the light on this. Mm-hmm. Meaning, I'm over here, I already see the light.
Right,
You might want to check out the light with me. Or Marcus Aurelius is he's a good reference point. One of the classic Stoics. You might want to check him out. So I feel like there's a little, you're just bolstering your opinion by offering other people that you agree with. Mm-hmm. And now it's supposed to give it clout. That's kind of the feeling I get a little bit. Gotcha. Okay, continuing on. Then they try their hardest to make what solutions I'm trying to give doesn't apply to them because of X, Y, Z, all excuses. And again, Now, instead of saying, hey, well, what way am I explaining these that people have got perfect solutions, allegedly, which again, that's a huge assumption, is that my solutions are freaking perfect and they just won't listen. But instead of saying that, it's like, oh, maybe my solutions, number one, aren't that great, or number two, maybe I'm not explaining them out very well. But none of this is my fault. It's their fault, and they're just making excuses. It's not on me. And then it continues, almost as if they are too good to implement the advice because it came from me and me alone. And this is where you start to hear that. This is where I start to get a little bit of a sense of the mindset of the individual. Because the individual's perception that that people don't like or people don't respect them, the individual, it causes that individual to act in ways that that individual doesn't even perceive themselves. Mm-hmm. So what shows through, again, intent has a smell. What shows through is frustration. What shows through is resentment. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Resentment shows through. You can't hide resentment. Annoyance. When you're annoyed that people aren't listening to you, it shows through. Arrogance shows. When you think you have the perfect solution and that's how you're coming across, that's how you're talking to people, that shows through. Mm-hmm. And so that perception that people don't like me, that perception that that people are looking down on me, that perception that you have of yourself shows through and it comes across in a bad way. The next sentence, literally solving people's problems and they are deliberately not listening. Again, none of this has to do with me. None of it has to do with my solutions themselves. None of it has to do with any of that. They just don't like me. It's their fault.
Yeah. Totally their fault.
And by the way, in doing that, we have to assume that these people are just going to fail because they're not listening. So I would rather fail than listen to Fred here. Mm-hmm. And then and then this is just, it's not how I present the information they should use. My tonality is just fine.
Oh yeah, just fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? This is not my fault. My tonality is fine. Like the way I'm presenting. Look, I'm presenting this in the most just beautiful way.
Yeah.
It's not on me. It's not my fault. My tonality is actually perfect. The way I present my ideas is so good.
You know what's funny is like, I know you're exaggerating, but it's for good reason.
I'm trying to make the point.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's good because, I'm putting myself in his shoes where I'm like, my tonality is fine. Like, what does it feel like when you for real believe that your tonality is fine? You say, but my tonality is fine. Like, but really what it really is I never really thought about it. It doesn't stand out as not fine to me, So it's like, yeah, my tonality is fine. I'm going to include that in there just so we all know kind of thing, right? That's how it feels for me. Yeah. But in reality, it's like, oh, is it? Fine, just fine. Because apparently not, right? So that's why you exaggerate it to help it stand out as a thing. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? But yes, I feel it. That's what I felt when my tonality is fine. That's what I felt. You might as well have said my tonality is the most perfect tonality in the history of tonality.
Yeah. Because that's not something that you would even think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just be like,
as a person,
But you go through it and you think, you know what? The way I talk to everyone is actually fine. It's actually good.
Yeah. Like if it wasn't, I would know about it.
Yeah, clearly.
It would stand out to me. Yeah, exactly.
Next sentence. It's almost as if they won't listen to me because they know I'm right. And they want to prove I'm wrong by not giving me the respect. All kinds of insecurity issues right there. All kinds of insecurity, and that insecurity comes across. And it doesn't come across as like, Echo's kind of insecure, but will listen. No, it comes across as you're overcompensating by a long shot. And by the way, it's almost as if they won't listen to me because they know I'm right. I mean, that's just crazy talk, right? Mm-hmm. How many times, Echo Charles, How many times have you heard me say, I know I'm right?
None. Zero.
And there's some things that I'm pretty knowledgeable about.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
There's some things that I'm pretty knowledgeable about. And how many times have I don't even know what this guy does for a living. But let's say maybe, well, there's no telling. But even a master of something shouldn't say, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
Very, very, very seldom.
Yeah. And
very seldom.
Man, especially that right there. I know I'm right. There's a difference between like, I know this is true, or I know this is.
How about
like,
this? I think this is true.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm talking like
because
a
you're
factual
going
thing.
next level.
Yeah. Well, okay. So.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to say
saying factual, like he was there. That person was there at that location. Like I know that's true. Like that's different than saying I know I'm right about this. You know, I know I'm right. I know I'm right. Yeah. No, you have never said that.
Meanwhile, this guy is saying it. And by the way, you know, this is like starting to get into the, hey, everyone is against me. Not only that, the whole world, everyone that I deal with, they all don't listen to me. What is wrong with everyone else, right? This isn't even like, hey, look, you and I had a little disagreement. I'm going to take ownership of it and just say it's my fault. No, this is everyone.
Yeah.
Continuing on, I feel the majority of people see me as lesser, not worthy of respect or listening, even though I use such obvious logic. Now this is where I start to feel like sympathy, right? Like, because now you got this bad, low self-esteem, low self-opinion, and when you see yourself as lesser, then you start to overcompensate for it. Many people start to overcompensate, and you know they start to try and act like they start to say things like, "I use obvious logic."
Yeah.
There's a whole genre of people who like to use the terms facts, logic. And so when they say, well, you know what, Jocko? Look, I come at people with facts and logic, and sometimes it just pisses them off. And what they don't, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir, I do.
It's one of the things that you say, you refer back to a lot, which is when someone says, you know, hey, I'm just that type of person you just have to deal with it. They feel the same way about saying, look, I just deal in facts and logic. And, you know, people can't accept it sometimes. They can't accept it. And what are you going to say? Well, you know, lies are better, or it's one of those. It's kind of like you put yourself in a position of authority, right? Listen, I like to use facts and logic.
Yeah, it's like irrefutable.
Yeah, I use facts and logic, and other people are just emotional and crazy, and obviously everyone should just listen to me. So that's kind of a little bit of that tonality here. Yeah. So it continues. These people, and by the way, people is in quotes. I'm not kidding. People is in quotes. These people, as if they're subhumans.
Yes, sir.
These people continuously try to exercise their power over me defiantly. An extreme, and then it's kind of a weirdly worded sentence, an extreme, non-influential presence, even with logic, tact, and respectfulness. So he's talking about himself. No one wants to listen to me. So saying that you have tact, respectfulness, and logic. I mean, this is there's no ownership about the message, about the delivery, about the tonality, about the attitude. Everything is everyone else's fault. And by the way, like, this is one of those things where if he was talking about, you know, I got this one department and the two senior people in the department, they have a real, then you start thinking, okay, well, you know, maybe they got some ego and maybe you need to massage their ego. We'll work through that. This is everyone. We're talking about, you know, everyone that I'm interacting with doesn't listen to me. They disrespect me. He continues on. People just refuse to even respectfully move out of the way when I'm trying to get around them. Not even strangers, people I live with. This statement, first of all, why not move around other people, right? That's first of all. Second of all, you ever hear when someone says, oh, I was thinking about buying a Corvette, and now everywhere I look, I see Corvettes?
Yeah.
And this is the same thing where he feels disrespected. Now, anytime anybody's in his way, they're straight up disrespecting him.
Yeah. Yes.
continues on. I don't understand what it is about me that most people don't respect. Everyone seems to have the attitude to defy or oppose everything I say, no matter the circumstance, whether I'm trying my best to lead, give advice, etc. People won't listen to me. They won't get behind me. I lack so much influence. It's not funny. I try, but to no avail. What do you think? So here's what I think to this individual. Stop trying so hard. Stop trying so hard to lead. Stop trying so hard to influence. Stop trying so hard to give advice to everybody. Leadership starts with following people. That's where leadership starts. I would say, assessing what I'm reading, that you lack real true confidence. Real true confidence. You have some false bravado that makes you say it's obvious and I'm logical. That's not real. I think you lack, and the lack of confidence comes through all over this thing. And so does the overcompensation. So, oddly enough, let me tell you something. Start training jiu-jitsu. Strange thing to say, right? Strange thing to say. Start lifting weights. Those are two things. I'm going to say start training jiu-jitsu, start lifting weights. Why? Because you lack confidence. And those things will start to give you confidence. Start listening to people. Instead of always feeling like you need to give your 2 cents, start listening to people. It actually takes confidence to listen. I write about that in Leadership Strategy and Tactics. It takes extreme confidence to accept other people's ideas. That takes the highest level of confidence. And if you don't know that, then you're constantly trying to show that you don't need to listen to their ideas. So start listening to other people. Start trying to support their plans instead of trying to force your great ideas down everyone's throats. Because right now you don't have a relationship with anybody. All you do is you're constantly outbound at people, do this, do that. It's always about you. So start following other people. Start supporting other people. It takes confidence. It takes true confidence to follow. It takes true confidence to support other people. And right now, you don't have that kind of confidence. You don't have that kind of humility, and so you act arrogant. And that right there is probably why no one listens to you, because you act arrogant. So force yourself to be humble. Force yourself to listen. Force yourself to follow. And over time, you will start to be appreciated. And when people start to appreciate that, you and the way you behave, then people will start to listen to you. And then eventually you will be followed by people. And all that right there starts off with you taking ownership of your shortfalls instead of blaming everyone else. Because that's exactly what this whole thing is. And if you want to go through life blaming everyone else for everything that doesn't go your way, then you actually have no power over it. And you'll just continue in this situation forever. But if you want to actually take ownership of it, you can fix the shortfalls, which are yours. They're your shortfalls. And then you can become eventually the leader that you want to be. Otherwise, you continue down this path of blaming everyone else, not changing yourself, and you will continue to be not listened to, not respected.
Bro, this is an extreme case.
It's an extreme case. It's an extreme case, and I really hope. I truly hope that this individual is really listening.
Yeah.
Because the way that this individual feels about everyone else, it's going to be really easy. Jocko's an idiot.
Yeah. Jocko's another one of those people. Yeah.
Won't listen to my logic.
Yeah, and
it makes that actually, honestly, it makes me sad. Yeah. It makes me sad to see someone in this state.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, and I don't want to come off like, oh, this is an extreme case, like I'm this expert. But I will say that I think we all are in the same boat.
But did you just say that? Speaking of arrogance, jeez.
But I think we're all in the same boat to say we know what this is. We know people like this all the time. Bruh, ask, this. I'm not like disparaging fitness people at all, but you ever had an extreme fitness person where if you ate some bubble gum, they'd be like, you know how much sugar's in that bubble gum? The thing is, Brad, that's all true. All that facts, all those facts and logic and all this stuff. Oh yeah, they're not gonna land though because, Brad. Okay, so I used to get into not arguments but little things with my brother where he'd every once in a while, he's not an extreme case, but every once in a while he'll bust out some debate stuff, you know, out of nowhere, right? Where you know how someone will say something and they're just talking casually, and then you'll be like, "Hey, what you said there's not right," and all this stuff, right? Yeah, no one likes that. No one likes that. No matter how correct, no matter. So what I wound up telling them to try to sum up the whole thing, I said, "What you're saying is right, but what you're doing is wrong." And so it's like there's another level to it, you know, like all this facts and logic, whatever.
Wait, you told that to your brother?
Yes. Like when you
wait, you guys were in a debate of some kind?
No,
or you were just giving him a general sort of overview of his existence?
I was scolding him for getting people into debates all the time. Okay. You know, like if me and you were talking, he's listening. Like there was this time, I think this is what prompted it, where me and Terry were and we were just talking about kids, you know, just kind of raising kids, and we're like doing this and this, and he was sort of listening and kind of in the conversation, but I was talking to Terry, and we were talking about something, I forget exactly what it was, but something about like, oh, if you do this, this will create this response with the kid. And then we're like, but what if it had the reverse response or whatever? And then he chimed in with something like, oh no, it would have this initial response. And I'm like, well, but it could stand to reason that, look, they might respond like this, you know, kind of just talking though, like, isn't it interesting kind of thing? And then meanwhile, I'm talking to Terry, by the way, and facilitating Jade's comments, but I'm more talking to Terry. And then he interrupted and goes, no, there's studies about this and that. And then I'm like, everyone's kind of like pausing. I was like, oh, dude, he's really aggressive right now. He even said afterwards, he's like, no, I'm sorry, that came off, whatever.
He likes to do that.
Oh, yeah, big time. And that's why I wound up, when I say scolding, it's like, brother, it's your brother, so it's not even scolding. But nonetheless, it's, like what you're saying, regardless of what it is, like if you have all these logic, irrefutable logic and facts and all this stuff, like, bro, that's all correct. But what you're doing is wrong.
What just one thing that really bothers me about this is I actually know 100%, which I just talked about not saying. Yes. I know that an individual in this situation can turn it around.
Yeah, so
I know they can turn it around.
Yes.
There's in leadership strategy and tactics, I have a section called conform to influence. And it just talks about, like, hey, basically what you just said, you know, when the fitness person's like, hey, you should work out every day at 4:00 in the morning. And people are like, hey, dude, I'm not going to listen to you because you're barking at me. You're offensive to me. Yeah. You know, I had this question at the muster in Australia from the female that was like, hey, I love health. I care about health. I'm working out every morning. I'm trying to get everyone motivated. I'm telling them that they shouldn't be eating what they're eating for lunch. I'm telling them they should come work out with me afterwards. And she's basically not part of the crew. Yeah. They're all just looking at her thinking, just be quiet. Yeah. And I said, why don't you form some relationships with the people so that they start to listen to you? So that's another kind of overlying or underlying tone here is you don't have relationships with anybody. Why are they going to listen to anything that you say? Yeah. Form relationships with people. How do you do that? You listen to them. You follow them. You support them. Yeah.
That is, like you say, that you can recover from it. And that, but it's not going to be the next day, man. In fact,
no, for sure. He's got a little campaign. He's got a campaign ahead of him. I think. Yeah, big campaign.
Because the same way that you look at the Corvette thing that you did, and you're always seeing the Corvettes everywhere, and so it's like this kind of pattern of thought, right? Where now he looks at everyone as like, oh, I just can't wait. Like it's almost like he's waiting for them, anticipating them to disrespect them or whatever, and that's just how. But it's a two-way street. People are now waiting for him to say some BS to them now. He's going to roll in the room and people are like, here comes whatever with his crap.
Let me throw a hypothesis at you. The reason I think it might be a little not as hard as you think it would be is because I bet people don't really have these horrible feelings about him. I bet they're just kind of like, you know what I mean? They're just kind of like, oh yeah. Like when they say, oh, you know, I don't, when they say to them, I don't think we're going to do it that way. He's thinking, see, they don't listen. And they're really just thinking, well, it seems like there's a problem with that. You know, it seems like that'd be a little logistically complicated, you know, and he doesn't hear that. He just hears they hate me and they don't listen to me.
That is possible.
So it might not be, I get asked sometimes, well, I'm a female and the guys are thinking this, or I'm a man, I'm working with these women and they're thinking that. And I go, who probably is thinking the most about being a man in that room?
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
You know who's probably thinking the most about being a woman? I've had female leaders come and brief me over and over again. And I'm not thinking, oh, it's a woman, I'm going to see it from this perspective. Right. No. Are there some people that do that? Sure. But most people are like, oh, what is she talking about?
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that some of this is just in his head. Some of it is just in his head. And the person that's thinking about this the most is actually him.
Yeah. It's possible.
It's also possible that
everyone does.
Well, this much I can promise you. These people are not going home and thinking about him all night.
Yeah,
I can promise you that's not happening. Maybe 2 of them are.
Yeah.
But he's going home and thinking about them all day, all night. He's thinking about how much they disrespect him, how much they're not thinking about that. Yeah. They don't move out of his way. He walks down the hallway and wants to get into the freaking refrigerator room, and someone's in the way, and they kind of like go first.
Yeah.
They never think about that moment again. He's dwelling on it.
I know.
Don't dwell on it, man. No one's thinking about it. Just be cool. Listen to other people. Be humble.
Bro, that's rough too. Like if that's in your mind, like people just won't even get out of my way when I'm trying to go around them. It's like, whoa, bro, that's like some sensitive, like, bro, that's where you're finding this. Bro, you're finding Corvettes everywhere,
You're finding Corvettes everywhere you look is a Corvette. Even Corvettes that aren't Corvettes start looking like Corvettes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
You start seeing
little Fieros.
Yeah, Fieros.
Remember
looking
those?
like, yes,
Pontiac.
Unfortunately. They start looking
like a Corvette.
Yeah.
Brother, and to me, as far as me goes, that's true. But at the same time, everyone could know this about this guy. Everyone could have this like notion of this guy that this is who this guy is already. He's so annoying. Every little thing that I do, he has some advice to make it different or better. Yeah.
But even those guys, you don't think about them when they're not there.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is
even
true.
those guys.
Yeah.
When they show up, you're like, oh, here comes Billy.
Yeah, with his...
And somebody named Bill, by the way, hit me up on social media and says,
right?
why is all the bad guys named Bill? Okay, so let's say Darren.
Darren, dang.
You got little Darren coming in. You go, oh, here's Darren with his loud mouth. Or he's got his own ideas.
Yeah.
When Darren leaves, I'm not thinking about Darren. It's not driving me crazy. I'm not taking a year. He took a year to formulate this email. A year to formulate. So he's thinking about this all the time for a year.
Yeah,
to try and articulate it the right way, which, by the way, according to him, he did. He did articulate it the right way. He says, I've been working on asking you this question for over a year, and this is the best way I think I can articulate it. This is it. The best way.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's hard. Now, okay, so there's this.
I thought you were going to comment at least on the fact that I told him to start training jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, bro, I have nothing to add. Yes, sir.
Start training jiu-jitsu. Isn't it? It's a real thing. Help your self-confidence.
Yeah.
Hang around with some other people. Get choked out. Get arm locked.
Yeah.
Start lifting weights.
Yeah, and maybe
start getting in shape.
Maybe one of those results, one of the many results of that might be, but you won't be compelled to try to correct everybody everywhere you go. Like, okay, so sometimes, like, I want to say all the time, bro, if people aren't asking for like advice, not all the time, sometimes it works, but if they're not asking for advice, you can't just unsolicited be correcting people.
How often are you walking around just standing by and hoping that everyone gives you advice on stuff? There's not a lot of people like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really rare. But there was a time, okay, back to my brother, Jade. He was stuck in sand with his truck on Kauai. So he wasn't stuck, but he was getting stuck, right? And we could all see him. He was kind of in the distance there, and he's starting to get stuck. And there's all kinds of techniques to get unstuck in sand. All kinds of techniques, right? Sure. But there's a protocol. It's pretty standard or whatever. So he's beginning to get stuck. And our other friend, Richard, is he the most tactful guy in the world?
Sounds like a no.
At every single moment of his life, maybe not. And at this particular moment, he wasn't. So I see Richard walking over there, about to go give Jade some advice on how to not get stuck, right?
Is he qualified to give advice? And should Jade be taking advice at this point?
Okay, well, that's another question. To me, if you're about to get stuck, if it really seems like you're about to get stuck and someone's going to offer you advice to not get stuck, I think logically, right, you should take the advice. But we're dealing with the real world here. So Jade's about to get stuck. Jade has a protocol in his mind. Right, he's not like unaware of this protocol, but he has it in his mind. But according to what seemed like, what it looked like was in Richard's mind, he didn't. So Richard's aggressively going over there to give him some unsolicited advice, which he obviously needs, right? And we can't hear any of the advice. We can't hear it. We only see the body movements, right? So you see, aggressively Richard's telling him whatever he's telling him with his hand movements and all this stuff. Jade's like, no reaction. The kind when you're real annoyed, but you have no reaction. You're just like kind of looking down or whatever. And he's like doing his own protocol. Meanwhile, Richard's like coaching him aggressively, not landing at all, falling on deaf ears, as it were. And every time, it's like every maybe 5-10 seconds, Richard would like turn around and throw his hands up as if to say, this guy's not listening to me. And he did that maybe 3-4 times, right? So you could tell it was not going good over there. So I'm like, all right. So we're all watching it, me, my other brother, and we're kind of laughing a little bit because we see the scenario. We see Jade getting stucker and stucker. And Richard, we just see the whole thing playing out. So later on, we kind of talk to Jade, kind of teasing him, right? Like, bro, why don't you just like listen or whatever? And he went into that side of the whole deal where it's like, man, you can't it's hard to listen when someone just like jumps in your whole stressful situation, offering you all this like whack advice in this whack kind of way.
Yeah, there's ways to deliver advice in critical situations like that. And even then, most likely an indirect approach is advised.
And that's and in this situation to him, or it doesn't matter what it looked like to us. What it looked like to Richard is like, oh, this guy obviously needs my advice right now. Obviously. In Jade's mind, he's like, I know, I've done this before.
So I had a conversation with somebody on EF Online the other day. I was saying, look, in this situation, you should approach with an indirect approach. Yeah. And then as I'm talking to her, I can see that she's kind of annoyed, and she actually was like a logic and facts based thing. Look, why can't I just say the logic and facts of what's going on and then have everyone just get on board with the program? Was the thought process, right? And I said, I can see that this bothers you because what you're saying from your perspective is, look, I know the facts. It doesn't make any sense that I waste all this time trying to, take this indirect approach to try and get someone to understand the facts so we can change the direction that we're going or adjust the plan accordingly. That's just dumb. I said, I can see that on your face. Here's the thing. If you take a direct, which is why we're having this conversation, by the way, you take a direct approach and it doesn't work. So you don't adjust the plan. I'm suggesting you take an indirect approach, which will actually work. And yes, it will take a little more time up front, but the result will be positive. So if Richard would have taken an indirect approach and walked over and he would be, why should I have to tell Jade that? Why should I have to I could just tell him, hey, you need to put it in reverse and rock it, or whatever advice he had to give him. If he would have gone over and said, hey, do you want me to tell you where your tires are at, or something like that? Just a nice, just a little indirect approach.
Jump on his team.
Yeah, just jump on his team. And then all of a sudden, Jade's mind is open. All of a sudden, they're literally on the same team just by saying, hey, you want me to put some weight on the front for you? Or whatever. Hey, do you want me to throw some extra? Whatever you do to get on the team. And then you're going to win in the end. And the indirect approach, which seems like a big pain in the ass out of the gate. Oh my God, I can't believe I have to do this and play this game. I have to play this game. Well, listen to what I'm talking to you about. Play the game because you will actually get accomplished what you want to have get accomplished. As opposed to, I'm just gonna take a direct approach. To tell them what's up. People aren't ready to receive it, and so it's useless.
Wow, it's so true. And I'm thinking back to the getting stuck in the sand scenario too, where And here's the thing, to make it matters worse, like it's reasonable to assume that how Richard came up to him wasn't like, hey, like we got a problem, let's do this. It wasn't that. It was like, hey, dummy, stuck in the sand, dummy, like you don't know what you're doing, kind of. I'm not sure what he said, but it seemed like that was the approach, right?
Not only the direct approach, it was just openly hostile.
It was openly hostile.
Openly
That's
hostile.
what I think.
So now you get immediate defensiveness. I'm not listening to anything you say. I would rather get stuck than listen to you.
That was literally like what I felt. Like it seems like Jade right now would way rather get stuck and then listen to Richard right now. And quite frankly, I don't blame him. The way Richard was like throwing up his hands, like, "Oh my gosh, you're so dumb," kind of a thing. Like again, I didn't hear what he said, but that's what his body language was saying. I'll tell you that. So man, I felt him. So yeah, man.
Let's hope that this guy here can actually listen to what we're saying. I mean it in the most positive possible way. I think you can get out of this situation, but you got to take ownership of what's going on, and you got to make some real changes. Hit us back up. Hit me back up on that. Oh, that'd be cool. I'd like to hear how it all works out.
There's one
I'd like to hear a positive feedback.
Like Jordan Peterson, I think it was on Joe Rogan, but so you know how they make those like Jordan Peterson versus Jordan.
Yeah.
Okay, so what he said was part of it got made into that, right? Part of it did. So he was like everybody's rejecting you. Everybody's rejecting you. It's you, right? Kind of thing. And it's funny because it's like the tone that he said it, but that's kind of irrefutable logic right there, you know, where it's like, man, you're kind of like the girl, it's a joke, I think. I'm pretty sure it's a joke. The girl who goes to the doctor and says, hey, like, my finger hurts or whatever, you know, like when I touch here, like my finger hurts or whatever. And then the doctor goes, okay, the solution is don't touch there, you know, kind of thing. Bro, that's like, it's real obvious to people, you know.
Yeah. It's the tortured genius that Leif talks about in Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm right, and everyone else just doesn't see the brilliance of my, you know, what I'm doing. No one sees how brilliant I am. Yeah. No one sees how brilliant I am.
Yeah, they're too dumb.
And yeah, it's just horrible for me. And it's like, no, actually, maybe you're not right.
Yeah, no, bro. At the very least, something's not right.
At the very least, your approach is wrong.
All right. Next question. Is it necessary to explain the why of what you're doing as a leader if you're not ever asked why? My varsity athletes never question anything, as I assume they either think that it'll be disrespectful or because they simply think they need to follow my directions.
Yeah, they should absolutely know why. And people on your team do not need to ask you why for you to tell them. You should tell them why they're doing what they're doing. That way they can lead. That way they have a deeper understanding of what they're doing. That way they know how to act and what to do when you're not there, which you won't always be there. And when you do that, they actually learn. They are actually learning how to lead themselves because they start to understand the importance of knowing why. So, you know, this happens to me. I mean, there's a lot of people that have worked for me over the years that I didn't need to tell them why to do anything. Bro, they were ready to rock and roll. Like, they did not care. I mean, you think JP ever looked at me and said, hey, sir, can you explain to me why you want me to do that? No, he's like, JP, machine gun nest, attack. He's attacking. Like, by the time I get out of my mouth, he's going. Yeah. So there's no reason. He's never going to ask me why. You know, at least not back then. You know, now that we work together all the time, if I'm like, hey, I think we should do this, he'd say, well, why do you want me to do that? Because he's, you know, he's running FTXs and he knows what's going on more than I do. So if I tell him to do something or I ask him to do something, he might say, well, why do you want me to do that? What's the effect you're looking for? So it's different now. Yeah. But my point is, much like a varsity athlete, you know, that respects their coach and likes their coach and wants to do a good job. Well, when JP was 21 years old, he wasn't asking me why to do anything. Yeah. And, you know, for that matter, that was true for a lot of people that have worked for me over the years. Like, they trust me and they don't need to know why they're doing what they're doing. They're going to do it. They're going to do it to the best of their ability. That doesn't mean that I don't tell them why. Yeah. Because I absolutely should. Because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you can't lead. Decentralized command doesn't work. You can't make decisions in the field. So even with football athletes, it's cool that they're totally just on board. But you should still tell them why, because it's a good principle to follow in any leadership situation.
Yeah, yeah, especially as a coach too, man. That'll like supercharge like the learning process, I think, or the training process. Like even like in jiu-jitsu, there's good examples, like hip escape or shrimping, right? You know, when you first start or whatever, if you're just doing it across the mat, you're getting taught how to do it and all this stuff, and you're kind of like I don't really get why we're doing it right now. Later you find out, you just do it because everyone else is doing it. What are you going to do? A new martial arts class, and you're going to start asking.
That's actually an
why.
Excellent example. Is if you know why you're learning the hip escape, then you do it with better intent. Right. And no one could tell just by watching you do it whether what your intent was or not. Yeah. Even though they might get a little scent of your intent. But it's one of those situations. If you know why you're doing it, you're going to do it better. Just like if you're coaching football and you got guys running a certain thing, they're not going to ask you why. But if you tell them why, they know why they're doing it, they're going to do it better.
Yeah, so true, the football thing. Because in football, you do kind of some oddball things if you just see it on the surface. Mm-hmm. You know, there's this thing called grass drills, right? Where you just basically you get your feet, like you kind of run in place real fast, like kind of a little bit wider stance. And then you like basically you sprawl. You know, yeah. And, you know, you hit the ground, you get back up real quick, and then there's all these drills you do, right? Mm-hmm. They face the ball this way, then you turn, and then you come back and you're chopping your feet the whole time, right? So on the surface, I remember when I was like little doing that, I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is just like conditioning, really, like moving your whole body and conditioning, getting back up. But after a while, you're like, nah, because if you get knocked down, which you will, like, bro, football, you can get knocked down like 3 times within like 15 seconds, you know, like the faster you can get up and start running again is like, bro, that's a good skill to have, you know, kind of thing. So if you're drilling that every single day, not only do you get better and quicker at that, it becomes way more instinctual. So, okay, then there's a lot more to it, obviously. But man, if someone was explaining that to you every time you're doing it, like even just yelling it out, just calling it out as it's happening, like, good, this is going to get you guys up quick when you get knocked down on a play, but, you know, just yelling it out. Who cares? Whatever. You don't have to sit them down and say, this is why you're doing these guys. You don't have to say that necessarily. I'm saying in a football situation. But if you're going through that training with that in your mind, like, oh, I know why I'm doing this, bro. You're gonna charge that thing, and you're gonna problem solve better while you're training. Yeah, man. Kind of goes deep on that one.
When I was coaching a lot of MMA fighters, I would always be telling them why they're doing a drill. And it made me think of when you were saying, you know, even if they're just yelling at you, you know, I'd be like, this is the end of the round. This is where you're going to, you know what I mean? Or if you're down here, this is where you're going to have to get back up. This is where the fight gets won. Like, you know, because, you know, some fighters, if they get taken down and they're a striker and they're going against a good grappler, if they get taken down, they're going to have to get back up to win the fight. Yeah. And so when they know that, you can see it compute in their brain. Whereas if I'm just saying, get back up. Yeah. No. So tell people why. Yeah, man. What do you think? One more question.
Sir, I've listened to all of the podcasts before asking this question. Can you please explain how do you deal or have dealt with your insecurities? Thank you very much for your help.
I guess broadly, fundamentally, what I'm going to do with my insecurities is I'm going to confront them. I'm going to put them out there. I'm going to own them. I'm going to own them. I'm going to own my insecurities. If I had to think of examples of situations where insecurities came into play for me, one, I was going through BUDS, basic SEAL training, and there was an event called Pool Competency where you are wearing your underwater breathing apparatus, your scuba gear, and they do all these horrible things to you. And it's a very hard evolution. And I failed it. And I was confident going into it because I'd kind of done well. Most of the water things, underwater, knot tying, life savings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I had done well. I was comfortable in the water. Mm-hmm. And so when I failed this thing, which was I was freaked out, you know, and because people would fail pool comp and get kicked out of BUDS, you know, it's a nightmare for me. So I fail. And by the way, if you fail, so you take it on Friday, and then if you fail, you take it again on Monday. And if you fail again, you're rolled back. And then once you're rolled back, now you fail something else and you're gone. So it's a nightmare for me. I mean, I'm completely, I've gone from confidence to insecurity about this thing. So what did I do? Me and a couple of the other guys, we I don't know why the instructors let us do this. They could probably get in trouble for it, but they let us take the scuba gear and use it in the dip tank, which is just a big bucket full of, a big container full of water, probably 4 feet deep, and it's probably 8 feet long by 4 feet wide. So it's just a small, where you take fresh water and you put things to clean it. You put in fresh, we call it a dip tank. So they let us fill the dip tank up with water, totally unsupervised. And we went in there and we pool comped each other. So we ripped each other's masks off, beat each other to hell, and just trashed ourselves. And by the time I went on Monday, that insecurity that I had was now gone, because we had been so freaking harsh to each other that by the time I was rolling in there, I was like, yeah, this isn't even insecurity. I'm like, bring it. Go bring what you got. I'm ready. So that's one way to overcome, or that I look at as something I was insecure, nervous about, right? How am I going to overcome it? I'm going to attack it. I'm going to go straight into that thing, into that insecurity. Another thing I was thinking about was kind of funny. I was like at a bar, back in the day when I was young and single and whatever, hanging out, having some beverages.
Sure.
And I'm chatting with some girl that I met, and as we're talking, we're just talking, having a good time, whatever. And she's like, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm a dental hygienist. She's a dental hygienist. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then she says like something like, we could take care of that gap in your teeth. She says that to me, and like without missing a beat, I'm like, oh, are you serious? I didn't know that you could expand gaps. How much bigger could you make it? And like she was like totally, I don't know if the word's stoked, but she realized that this this gap between my teeth, which some people might have as a big insecurity, like, oh, cover your mouth. It's fine. Like, there it is. I'm making fun of it, basically. So I think that is the bottom line when you have some kind of something that you're insecure about. If it's something that you can take control over, cool, then attack it and get good at it. If you're insecure about talking in front of people, cool, attack that problem and get better at it. If you're insecure about, confrontations with people, start training jiu-jitsu. If you're insecure, whatever you're insecure about, do it more. If you're insecure, if you think, every time I write an email, I feel like I'm, it looks like junk. Cool. Write more, get better at writing it. So there's insecurities that you have like that you can attack. If there's something that you can't change or that you can't control, then just get it out there and have fun with it, as far as I'm concerned.
Sir, I do.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that a bad answer?
No, that's a good answer. In fact, that was a very clever response to the dental hygienist.
The dental hygienist wanting to fix the gap in my teeth.
Yep.
So I think that's good for questions, and hey, it's interesting times right now. What is it? It's April 2020. A lot of mayhem going on in the world. Everything from, we got viruses, and it's tornadoes and just all kinds of things. And, as I look at what's going on, it's just a gentle reminder to everybody, and maybe a not so gentle reminder, that the world is a hard place. The world is a hard place, and the world has no mercy. The world does not care. Nature does not care. Disease and disaster and viruses and violence. And this is the thing that you need to remember, is that even time itself, even just time itself, is picking you apart. Picking you apart slowly every minute of every day. Time is taking you down. And if you stare at that stuff long enough, if you stare at those things long enough, then just like the sun, it'll blind you. And so I say, don't stare at it. Don't stare at those things. Don't let them possess your brain. Don't let them take over your mind, because just like the sun can blind you, the sun also gives us light. And it gives us warmth, and it gives us life. And those dreadful things in the world, they may win in the end. And I can actually guarantee that time will. Time will win in the end, but it's not going to win right now. So in the meantime, make sure you live. Make sure you give it everything you got. Make sure you leave it all on the field. And live your life not blinded by the sun, but fueled by it. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. So Echo Charles, speaking of fuel, I know we need some clean fuel for our undertakings.
What is it? Clean fuel, no excuses. And wait, there's something else too, right?
There is something else.
Yeah. All right, what is it, Jocko? Clean fuel, no excuses.
That's a good one. You're missing one, apparently.
All right, well, hey, we're going to revisit that last one another time. But in the meantime, what we can do is...
You're probably forgetting the most important one. Maybe it's hard work.
All right, hard work. That's, I don't know.
I'm still new to that. Maybe that's why you are reaching.
Yeah. Nonetheless, yes, hard work, clean fuel, no excuses. There you go. Origin USA, by the way. But before we need the clean fuel, we're going to do hard work. But it's better, in my opinion, to do hard work doing something that you enjoy. And that's going to benefit you, by the way. Explain why you're doing what you're doing.
Something that gives you physical training, physical strength, physical stamina, and confidence.
Yes, sir.
We're hoping that the Holmes goes out and starts training so you just get that confidence up.
Capability across the board. Man.
Being more capable increases your confidence.
Yes, sir. Big time. So we're training jiu-jitsu. We're working out and training jiu-jitsu. Well, at this very moment, jiu-jitsu is kept to a minimum. We'll say a minimum, really, which is the safe and right thing to do, by the way. Like, you'd think, like, that sounds debatable right now.
You know, we did that podcast with Andy. We did a grounded podcast with Andy, and I forget when we recorded it, but, like, we were talking about jiu-jitsu and whatever, and people were like, no, your training is morally irresponsible and stuff. And I was like,
were you guys training?
Well, we didn't. Yeah. But I don't even remember what phase of, all that was going on. Yeah. But yeah, so the bottom line is you are correct. Right now, jiu-jitsu training is kind of at a minimum.
Yeah, big time.
For everybody.
Yeah, and and I don't want to get too into like what, where we stand on like the whole thing or whatever, but there's like a big picture, small picture scenario going on in a short-term and long-term scenario kind of playing out like it always does. And like, I think like if you're doing, so Jade uses this term, like falling on the right side of the fence of history or something like that, right? Where, we're trying this thing, we're ready for it to be done. This whole deal. It's quarantine, all this stuff. We're ready for it to be done. So there's certain things you can do and not do to kind of help facilitate the passing of this thing. And then there's things that kind of don't help facilitate the passing of these things. And there's things you can do that halt the passing of this thing. Okay. That jam us all up, right?
Okay.
So the question is, what are we doing?
So try and do things that are going to stop the
exactly thing, right? For yourself, for everybody. But the things like the short term, long term. Short term, you're gonna have to take a hit short term. You know what I mean? Small picture, jiu-jitsu, and a bunch of other stuff.
I think my jiu-jitsu is getting better, even when I'm not training, because I'm studying.
Yeah, and there you go.
Mental reps,
mitigating some stuff. But I know the thing is, it's a two-sided situation that has to be like they're battling with each other, and it's kind of whack.
It's a dichotomy.
It's a dichotomy. Nonetheless, when we get back to jiu-jitsu, if we weren't already in jiu-jitsu, and we're gonna start jiu-jitsu when we can, we're gonna get a gi. We're gonna get a rash guard. That's sort of the uniform, really. Best gi in the world, Origin gi.
Yeah. Well, it's just so everyone knows. Hey, look, we make jiu-jitsu gis, we make jeans, we make boots. Right at this moment in time, April 2020, we actually have shifted to making face coverings is the term, right? Because the president and the CDC and the government has said to wear face coverings. So we started making face coverings, and we actually shut down our other lines to make face coverings for people. So that's what's going on right now at originmain.com. We will get back to manufacturing jeans, boots, T-shirts, the whole 9 yards. There's still some stuff in stock as far as gis and stuff go, but right now that's what we're focused on, is trying to help America get through the scenario that we're in right now. And so you can check out those masks if you want them. We won't be making them for long, just because other people are starting to catch up, and so we were able to pivot very quickly because we have the entire supply chain right there. We own everything. We make everything. There's no, we have everything in house. So Pete and the team at Origin was able to really quickly start making these face coverings. And so as other companies start to make them, we'll go back to making what we want to make. No one wants to be in the business of making masks, right? But that's what the country needs. So that's what we're doing right now. If you want to get one of those, you can get them at originmain.com. We're trying to make them as fast as we can. And so that's one way to help America get through this. They're not N95 masks, right? They're what we can make, which is face coverings, which is what is in demand. I went to a meeting the other day on a construction site, and you know what? You have to wear a face covering.
Yeah.
So what am I wearing? I'm wearing an Origin face covering. That's what it's made for. It's not made for me to go and work in an ER. Yeah. No, it's made to show respect to someone else. Hey, look, I don't want to cough on you. I don't want, if I have it, which no one knows if you have it or not, because a lot of people are asymptomatic. So you wear this thing to protect the people around you, or, strangers, normal people. And what you're doing there is you're going back to what you were saying earlier. You are doing your best to halt the disease so we can get back to normalcy. So if you want one of these masks, go to originmain.com and you can get one there. Also, we have a bunch of supplements there. So if you're, and I know this is we've seen a huge spike in like milk, right? Because people don't want to go to the store. There's starting to be a shortage of food. If you get milk, if you can get milk, which is good tasting protein, and we're selling a ton of milk right now because people know that it's a good thing to have, in your house, because you can feed your kids, you can feed, you can, I don't know, I don't want to make the claim that, however long you could survive on milk only, but it's a great, it's a great thing to have in your house as food suppliers are getting shut down because of the virus or whatever. So we've been selling a ton of milk. We've been selling we sold out of Cold War, which is like an immune system booster. We just got it back in stock, so that's been selling like crazy because it's got things that help boost your immune system. Again, is this a Origin, or is this a COVID fight destroyer? No, it's just going to help your immune system, so people don't want to get sick right now. So that's been selling a lot, but that's what we're doing at Origin right now. It's different. It's different times. What else? What am I missing?
Yeah, that's
the supplements, the joint warfare. That's one thing that's going on right now. A lot of people are working out, hardcore. You're going to need that joint warfare. Yep. Krill oil. So we got all that stuff still, but if you want to check that stuff out, you can check that out. We're also we're making some fitness equipment. We like plyo boxes.
Yeah.
We just started making plyo boxes. Why? Well, look, our goal is not to make plyo boxes. Here's the deal. Yeah. America is sold out of plyo boxes right now. Damn. And so people want them because they're shifting to a home gym scenario.
Yeah.
So we just started manufacturing those. So if you want to get a plyo box, you can go and look, we're doing what we can to help get through this situation. Yeah. We just made another thing which you saw the burden.
The burden. Yeah.
It's like a old. No one's. It's what was it? It's like a kettlebell / Bulgarian bag / medicine ball / any other slashes?
Old boxing glove? I don't know.
Old boxing glove.
Really.
Yeah, so we got a thing called the burden, which you're going to be able to use for kettlebell exercises, but it's made of leather. It's badass looking. Yeah. We got to admit.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, what do you gonna explain the history on that, or the you know?
I mean, the long history is I had an idea, which I talked to Pete a while ago. We brainstormed of making something called the burden, which was something you could just carry. You could just carry the burden with you all the time, right? So no matter what's happening, you carry the burden. You can put it in your backpack. You can put it in your briefcase. And you're constantly carrying around, 20, 30 pounds worth of extra weight, which just makes you stronger. Mm-hmm. So, but it's you go through a development process and you look at, what resources do we want to put on doing this from the company. And right now, again, a bunch of people are saying they have to work at home now, work out at home, and they can't because they don't have any equipment. Well, how can we make what can we make that would make it possible for people to work out at home better? This is one of those things. Everybody wants. I mean, the amount of different workouts you can do with a kettlebell is phenomenal. Lot, yeah. So and kettlebells are sold out everywhere.
Bro, all gym equipment is sold out everywhere. Bro,
gym equipment everywhere is sold out.
It's crazy because my wife, my wife's talking to her little groups and all this stuff, and everyone's asking her, like, hey, do you guys have any extra weights? And I'm like, why the heck is it? Like, why is everyone asking you this?
Why is Jennifer from kindergarten class asking about kettlebells?
Yep, gyms, because the gyms shut down, and they're like, hey, they know that we have a bunch of weights or whatever. But it was crazy how many people were asking us, like, hey, do you have any extra? My neighbor's like, hey, do you have any extra weights? Do you have any extra weights? Unfortunately, I don't have any extra weights. Like, I use literally like I have 2-day the workout programs, one day 2, and they just repeat. So I use all my weights, all of them. There's literally 2 weights that I don't use, and sure enough, they just came and grabbed them or whatever. So it's like, man, yes. So we need the burden stuff where you can go online and get them.
Yeah. So that's the thing is, well, it'll ship with no weight in it. Like you'll fill it with steel bearings or lead shot or whatever, sand or rocks, depending on how heavy you want it. But yeah, the bottom line is we're very lucky. We're very lucky because I don't want to just call it luck, but to have the capability to own the supply chain and be able to make things that all of a sudden are in demand. Yeah. Like there's not too many people that can pivot and go from manufacturing boots because it's all in America. It's all under one roof.
Yeah.
Hey, we can make these and we can make them starting in a day or 2 days, and that's exactly what we're doing. Is trying to give people what they need during this crisis. And it's been great so far. So if you guys want to check that stuff out, if you need a plyo box at your house or if you need a burden to carry, you can check that out. Masks, whatever, they're there as well. And then all the different supplements are there. So appreciate the support. And if you guys have ideas or whatever, you see a demand for something, let us know, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to help. Look, obviously we want to get back, just like everyone else. We want to get back to making jeans, boots, and gis. That's what we want to make, and shorts and t-shirts and everything else. But when there's a need, we have to try and help get through this. So
also we have a store, jockostore.com. It's an online store. We're on Amazon. They only ship certain items quicker now.
Yeah,
if you buy stuff through Amazon, it can take like a month, 4 weeks.
What's interesting about that is for Origin supplements on Amazon, those are in the category of getting shipped like immediately.
Essentially, that's good,
essential items. Yeah, it's they looked at the products that we make and the health items, and that just put us in the category. So if you want to get Molk, if you want to get Joint Warfare, if you want to get Cold War, you can get it from Amazon right now, and it's on that list of stuff that's considered essential, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yes, and that is good.
What I did was when I was going through the list with Jeff and just pointed out some of the things that we had that I thought America needed.
Sure. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Me and Bezos, we go way back.
Yeah. Good relationship
Wow,
building
that
there.
was a really bad attempt at a joke.
Yeah, I respect it. Nonetheless, good news is Jocko Store is your get after it, discipline equals freedom shirt or hoodie. Like, is that an essential item? Yeah, maybe. We'll just say it's debatable. I don't know. It depends on who you are. I'm not going to make some crude kind of comparison, but there's no answer for that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. I'm not going to claim I know with my irrefutable logic or nothing like this. But we are shipping normal. See what I'm saying? You don't have to wait the 4 weeks. Normal shipping. Maybe some here and there if there's like a big influx or whatever because of the staffing and stuff. But shipping is normal, so that's good news. Anyway, jockostore.com. That's where you can get your Discipline Equals Freedom shirts, hoodies, rash guards. Get a rash guard, man. I think we have some still, but be cool on the jiu-jitsu just for now. Mm-hmm. Just be careful with it. All right. Be careful with what we're doing. Nonetheless.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
You're putting forth a positive message.
Yes.
Got it.
On both.
But do you wear a rash guard when you just lift?
I don't. No.
Okay.
But
I do for
I'm
some
not against
workouts.
It. Yeah. Oh, yeah, like some rings and stuff. Yes.
Rings for sure. Yeah. Rings for sure. Like that little bit of compression.
Yeah.
And also the protection of your arms. Because when you're doing a lot of, let's say, muscle ups or you're doing a lot of dips or ring push-ups, you can get the chafing on your outer arm.
Yeah, I can dig it. So yeah, keep that in mind for sure. But yeah, all cool stuff on there, I think. So yeah, if you want something, get something. We'll get it to you. Also, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, wherever you listen to iTunes. Is it essential? But I think so nowadays, because let's face it, man, we're just doing less. We're at the house more, all the stuff, like good consumable stuff. Good consumable stuff, podcasts, books, audio, or otherwise. Like there's going to be more of that. I think that's good. That helps us through this scenario.
So subscribe to the podcast is what Echo's saying in a really long roundabout way, which is fine. No, I guess we're on quarantine. We got plenty of time to explain things.
I'm relating to the situation.
Degree that no one cares about, but it's all good. Hey, we just started another podcast called The Thread. It is myself and Daryl Cooper of Martyr Made fame. Is he famous?
Yes.
Okay. So Daryl Cooper and I, he was on the last podcast, and the podcast The Thread is launched. We also have Grounded podcast, where we talk about life and jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
And everything in between. And then we got the Warrior Kid podcast, which you may have missed a release of Johnny Kim on the Warrior Kid podcast, so go check that out. And also, when you're talking about Warrior Kids, don't forget to check out IrishOaksRanch.com, where Aiden, a Warrior Kid, is making soap. Making killer soap. And that's the name of the soap. Making killer soap so that America can stay clean.
Yep. Also, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel.
Wash your hands, right? Wash your hands. That's the big deal right now. Wash your hands.
Yes.
So get yourself some Warrior Kid soap, some killer soap.
Yep. Kill the germs, man.
Yeah. Kill the virus.
Virus.
Is that? Virus. I heard that soap kills. Yeah, they're saying soap, just like soap kills the virus.
Yeah, or washes it off. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it kills it.
Well, because the virus can't live without a sustainable habitat. Right? It's like one of those situations. Yeah. Okay, look, I'm no germologist, biological expert, nothing like this. But from what I understand, the virus can live only for a certain amount of time on surfaces because it can't eat nothing, right? Can't live.
It's a virus, bro. I don't think it's eating anything.
Oh, it's eating stuff. If it's living, it's eating. Trust me. Nonetheless,
let's move on before we both look dumber than we're already looking.
Yeah, impossible for me, but nonetheless, we have a YouTube channel. Video version of this podcast and excerpts.
Yes.
Enhanced and otherwise.
Yes.
Little excerpts help you through the day, through the times, through situations that may arise.
Scenarios
all day for sure. But yeah, YouTube channel, Jocko Podcast YouTube channel. All good.
Yeah. And the excerpts have been getting, let's just say, give you a little credit here. They've been getting a little bit better lately.
Cool.
Not the enhanced ones, because I haven't seen one of those in a while, because I know you've been busy doing other things.
Damn it.
Psychological warfare, you can get that. The little psychological hitter to help you get through moments of weakness. That's the artist, formerly known as Jocko Willink, on iTunes, on MP3, whatever. Flipside Canvas, messages for you in graphic form, made by Dakota Meyer. You can check that out. Flipsidecanvas.com. Got a bunch of books. Leadership Strategy and Tactics. Way of the Warrior Kids 1, 2, and 3. Mikey and the Dragons. Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. Extreme Ownership. Dichotomy of Leadership. All kinds of good books for you to check out. We got Echelon Front Leadership Consultancy, where we solve problems through leadership. Go to echelonfront.com for details on that. We've got EF Online, which has been revamped, reformulated, according to Echo Charles. Live. That's what it is. Live. Interactive. It is myself. It is Leif Babin. It is the entire Echelon Front team on there virtually. We're doing online live 3 times a week right now. Live Q&As. So if you want to ask me a question, go to efonline.com. We got the leadership primer. We got the forum. We got the Q&A. We got immediate action drills. We got all kinds of stuff to help you lead. And this is the type of time right now where there's mayhem going on. Leadership is what is needed. So check out efonline.com. It's awesome. I think it's going to be the platform that becomes the premier way for people to get help in leadership in the world. And I know that's a bold statement. I'm making it. Also, we got the musters. Orlando, canceled. So that means next up, Phoenix, Arizona, September 16th and 17th. Dallas, Texas, December 3rd and 4th. Go to extremeownership.com for details. Look, we've sold out everything we've ever done. We actually canceled the show, and a lot of the people that canceled Orlando moved over to Dallas and or Phoenix. So we're going to fill out, we're going to sell out faster than normal. So if you want to come, extremeownership.com. And then EF Overwatch, which has executive leadership. It's our placement firm where we take leaders that understand the principles we talk about and we place them into companies. We also have, that's for executive leadership. For frontline leadership, we got eflegion.com. Look, we are getting, I know it's financial troubles right now with a lot of companies. There's also a lot of companies that have a massive demand, and we are getting hit up for employees, people that want to hire. So if you're a veteran, go to eflegion.com and sign up so we can get you connected with people that are looking to hire. And if you haven't had enough of my head-splitting, garish, overly aggressive voice, or you haven't had enough of Echo's random, semi-coherent postulations, then you can tune into us and connect with us on the interwebs, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Echo Charles is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And to all of you that are overseas right now in uniform, keeping evil at bay during these troubled times, thanks for what you're doing. And to the police, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, dispatchers, correctional officers, Border Patrol, Secret Service, thank you for keeping us safe on the home front. And special thanks to all the doctors, nurses, and all medical personnel that are on the front lines every day right now. You're out there risking your health to keep the illness, the virus at bay. So thank you for your courage and sacrifice. And to everyone else out there, life is not perfect, and it isn't going to be easy, but it is all you've got. So make it a good run, and make sure you enjoy the jam. And you do that by getting out there every day and getting after it. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.